Hi, everybody. Welcome to Let's Get Real on this beautiful Sunday night here with Coach Menachem Bernfeld. Thank you for joining us. We love when everybody comes. And again, tonight is Shir 144. And we thank everybody for coming with Coach Menachem's the program. Again, first to start off every week, thanking all the people that posted on the WhatsApp statuses, email people about it, let people know about it, and the people that come every week. And we really appreciate, like I said, every week. Not every program is for everybody. Not everything interests everybody, but it probably interests somebody else. So let people know about it. Even if you're not interested, I gather think tonight's topic is for everybody, young and old, no matter where you're holding in life. I think it's a very important topic. And we're here to have a sichas chaverim to really clarify it, talk it out, and gain a lot of perspective. So thank you for joining. If anybody wants to get the WhatsApp every Sunday of the speakers and all the information, you can WhatsApp me personally at 848-525-0066. Again, that's 848-525-0066. If you want to sign up to Menachem Bernfeld's emails, where he sends you all the information about what's going on and the replays and the upcoming speakers, you can go to his website. That's menachembernfeld.com and sign up for his weekly email. All the people that are watching this on YouTube, the replay, please click on the like button so me and Menachem can get all the millions of dollars from YouTube. And you can click on the subscribe button. And every Monday morning when Menachem uploads the videos, about 2-3 a.m., you get a ding and you get to watch that video. And again, you can always watch it on all the other platforms, listen to it, Spotify, Apple, Color. It's all over the place. So please join, let people know about it, and join this amazing, amazing program. First, start off also thanking all the advertising sponsors that promote us. First, the Lakewood Scoop here in Lakewood for promoting us out here. Special thank you to Ellie and Ariel from 5 Town Central. Special thank you to Chayla Kaufman and from JCN, the Jewish Content Network, for always promoting us on all the Jewish digital platforms. Coach Menachem Show is collaborating with OK Clarity. Again, OK Clarity is the place to find top-notch therapists, coaches, nutritionists. OK Clarity, you find most vetted professionals, extensive experience working in the Jewish community, and you can even find Coach Menachem Bernfeld over there. So if anybody wants to join them or follow their statuses, the number is 917-426-1495. Again, that's 917-426-1495. And you can follow them. Again, if anybody's here the first time, every Sunday night, guys, get it straight already. Come on, 3.5 years. Every Sunday night, 9:30, this is my D. We bring on the best of the best rabbanim, the best therapists, and we hash out the important topics that we all need to discuss. And please join us. Next Sunday is Erev Shuas. We're bringing on Harav Agoyin Atzadik, Hamashpia, Rabbi Yossi Zakatinsky from 5 Towns was on before. And the topic is expanding the domain of Avodas Hashem, how everyone could take their place on the Yontif Shuas. And Rabbi Zakatinsky is ready to knock it out of the park. I had a little talk with him, so please join. And it's going to be a very deep and meaningful program, so please join us. Again, tonight's Shir 144, and we have the President, CEO, and the CFO of the Shir with us tonight. He joined us, thankfully, Rabbi Arnoyach Fried, and he's going to explain us what 144 has to do with tonight's topic, which I'm still not sure what it is. Arnoyach.
First of all, we'd like to wish a big mazel tov to our Choshev moderator, Ushi Panis, upon the engagement of his daughter, Chana Rivka, to our Bocha, Choshev Yitzi Mandel from Pesach. Mazel tov to him and to the whole family. It should only be see Yiddish Nachas, the Zivik should be on the offer, the Chasna should be Ite Bizmanai. Second of all, I'd like to correct our Choshev moderator that this year is 143. And the topic is the art of showing up and being present in our marriage and relationships. And the first thing that came to my mind is how important would it be to realize the good qualities in our spouse or whatever relationship we have, and to concentrate positive on their good qualities, how much full of good they are. And B'siyat D'Shmaya 143 is Gemati, Malaya Kol Tov, full of good. So we should be able to grow on this and reach our goal. Eretz Hashem.
Amen. Appreciate that, the beautiful Gematria. Okay, so let's get into it. We're going to start first with our host, Coach Menachem Bernfeld. It's a very long topic, so it says a lot of stuff in it. Can you please let us know what are we talking about here? What are we here tonight? What are we trying to accomplish tonight?
Okay, thank you very much. I want to welcome everyone. Welcome to another Let's Get Real with Coach Menachem on the Sunday night. Thank you very much for showing up. And I want to thank you all for the feedback, whether it's positive, negative, constructive criticism, whatever it is. We always love to see how the audience picked up the information. So thank you for that. We've been discussing the past few weeks some heavy topics, going into the emotions, like what we're going to be discussing tonight. We've had Rabbi Shais Tau discussing that it's not only women, men also have that human part, that emotional part, and to find a place where they can express it. And not always is it to the wives. You have to find somewhere a community, which we need to work on. And then before that, even before, we had Dr. David Lieberman, before Pesach, how to deflate your ego, to understand what are our triggers, what's driving us. Then we had Rabbi Rosenfeld to understand the Menachem HaNefesh, to find some peace and calm, and it's not a goal that will get there one day. It's every day, no matter what you're going through, in the chaos, in the noise, to find a little bit, to be able to find a little bit of Menachem HaNefesh. And last week we had Rabbi Vigler. Wasn't an easy topic, and it does need some clarification, because many people felt, and he said it, we discussed a little bit about abuse, and people walked away feeling very bad that they felt that it's their fault. And he was saying that for somebody that's healthy wouldn't get abused, which is not something we need to understand that. And again, no, it's not. It doesn't tell us that you're not healthy if somebody was abused. And I do want to say, for those who feel that they're in an abusive situation, no matter what the abuse is, should reach out for help. There is help out there, and they deserve the help. And many times those people that are being abused feel they can't talk to anybody. They feel bad. They take the blame on themselves. So, yes, you need to reach out and get the help you need, and you deserve the help. And tonight, talking about EFT, we have with us Dr. Avi Muschel. And again, it's talking about emotions. Emotions is something that for many is still taboo, hard to connect to understand what it is. What are we talking about? Maybe the women are full of emotions, but men never. But it's not only women and men. There are many women that feel they've conquered that. They're stepped up to the plate. Their husband needs the help with their emotions. But whatever it is, nothing to do with men and women. To really understand what is emotions, and to connect to it, and to be able to talk about it. Now, that does bring us to a vulnerable topic, a vulnerable place, which we're going to be discussing tonight. But it's not always easy. Talking about understanding what your spouse needs, what you need, whether it's a love language, what language do they talk? If you're not aware, and then you can't connect. And you might say, I told my husband what my love language is, and he doesn't hear. Well, that's something to talk about. What's that open communication? You know, before Shabbos, he buys me a box of Band-Aids instead of flowers, because I told him 2 weeks ago that I need Band-Aids. He totally misunderstood. Or whatever it is, you need the time to sit with him or with her, to spend some time, but they never have time. They're always on the go, always running. But that really brings up a lot of deep emotions, a lot of things that it's hard, and those triggers. And yes, I do think that it opens up the ideas of how we grew up, the way our parents dealt with us, the way we took it, our, friends, and all of this comes out after marriage. So the truth is, we're not going to be focusing only on marriage. Anytime you need to work out something with somebody, and that's shown bias, whether it's at work, with the chinuch, with your kids, kibbud avayim, with your parents, whatever it is, to be able to understand what they want, what do you want, what's the trigger, how to talk about it, so that you can get to a place where you can communicate, understand each other, and strengthen the relationship. So I want to thank you, Dr. Avi, for being with us tonight, to help us with this technique that you teach, and hopefully this will help us in all the areas to become stronger in all the relationships, and especially with the relationship between me, myself, and I, to understand myself, and with my spouse, my kids, and with Hashem, Emetz Hashem, to strengthen all our relationships.
Beautiful opening. Okay, so let's get into it. First of all, let's review tonight's topic. It's the longest one, but we're going to get it and we're going to clarify it. The art of showing up and being present in your marriage and relationships. Learning the skills of how to cultivate presence and attentiveness in marriage and other relationships to strengthen connections with loved ones. So that's really the topic. Tonight's show we're going to do first Leil Nishmas, my father-in-law, whose yahrzeit was this past Shabbos. Tovia ben Baruch Yosef, Neshama Shel Big Aliyah, for all the shiurim that we do really in this chus for his neshama. All the hundreds of people here that are going to listen to it tonight, mention thousands of people that listen to it later. And Dr. Avi is going to do Refuah Shalema for
Yosef Chaim and Brian Del Peril.
Yosef Chaim and Brian Del Peril, Refuah Shalema. Dr. Avi, I'm going to read your bio, and then the floor is yours. You ready?
Yeah.
Dr. Avi Muschel Psyd is a clinical psychologist specializing in relationships and working in Clifton, New Jersey. In addition to his private practice, he's worked for 4 years at Yeshiva University Counseling Center and has spent the past 3 years at JEC High School. He's received smicha from Yeshiva's Orach Chaim in Queens and his doctorate in psychology from Long Island University Post. Dr. Avi, thank you for agreeing to coming on and coming and giving your time. We appreciate it. The floor is yours.
Okay, well, thank you very much for having me. It is a schus to be here. I'm sorry I think that took so long to get going with this, but here we are. And as you mentioned, we were talking about a lot about EFT, which EFT stands for emotionally focused therapy. It's a kind of therapy that is for couples specifically. It was developed by Sue Johnson. And there's so many pieces to EFT. There's so many layers, so many elements, and we're going to get into as many as we can tonight. It was, I think, a 96-hour training, so I don't know if we're going to go over every detail, but we'll get into a lot of it in Emetz Hashem over the coming hours. I want to really start by talking about one piece. As Coach Menachem mentioned, communication is a major, major part of it, and we're going to talk a lot about communication. Communication is not only about you and your spouse, that's a big deal, but it's also communicating with your friends, your colleagues, your neighbors, your parents, your children, really anybody. But I really want to focus on one piece of EFT, really the one that taught me and really brought me into EFT, as I'll explain. But one piece that, again, Coach Menachem mentioned is the piece of vulnerability. Now, what does the word vulnerability even mean? It's a big word, it's a trendy word, and there's a lot of elements to it. We could talk about the risk component, we could talk about the reward component, the happiness that comes with it, the challenges, but I really want to focus on one piece, and that is, I'm going to define vulnerability for at least right now as being real, as being authentic. You know, the first thing that caught my attention about the show when I heard about it a few years ago is getting real. Like that's a good name. That's what we're talking about. Being vulnerable is being real. It's being who you are. It's being authentic. And that's not so simple, but that is an amazingly important part of EFT. And I'll give you an example. EFT, when I did the training a bunch of years ago, one of the major requirements for the training is that they have a therapist do a real EFT session in front of you on video like this on Zoom, but it's in real time, it's in real life. And you're watching him or her do the session 3 floors above you in a building, whatever it is, on Zoom. So first of all, that's already pretty vulnerable to let a whole group of people watch your therapy session. That's not so simple. But let's go a little further. When I was in grad school for 5 years, I heard a lot about boundaries, which is another big word. I'm sure we'll talk about that tonight. It's also a popular idea, and it's very, very important. It's important to have boundaries in your relationship. And in grad school, you learn about professional boundaries, about having certain safe distances between your clients where you're not getting together for Shabbos lunch every week, that there's a certain professional balance, which I understand, and again, I respect, and I think it's a very good idea. But sometimes as a student in grad school, it felt like it was a little too much about the boundaries. There were so many rules, like pathologizing the client. If a client says to you, do you have any brothers? So some supervisors would tell you, ask them, why do you have any brothers? Why do you ask about my brothers? And if, you say, I'm not going to be here next week, and they say, oh, where are you going? You say, oh, it's not really your business where I'm going. And it felt a little uncomfortable. It didn't feel like me. And finally, here I am watching this EFT training, this real in life in vivo session. And George Fowler, who's an amazing EFT therapist, And he is doing this session. He's about to sit down for 60 minutes with a couple and really get into the kishkas of feelings and emotions and vulnerability. And right before they sit down, the couple says, "Oh, so do you have any kids?" And my heart stops. Oh my gosh, I hope he says, why do you ask? And what does he say? He says, "Yeah, I have 3 kids." And they say, "Oh, where do you live?" He's like, "Yeah, I live in Connecticut. My 9-year-old, 6-year-old, whatever the kids were." And I was just like taken in that moment. It's like a little nothing story, but it showed me how EFT is about being real. The therapist is not some god sitting on a kisei hakavod while the 2 clients are sitting there as these 2 nebuch situations. It's a very different feel. It's all 3 of us. Me, if it's one person, if it's a couple, the 3 of us, we're all just people. I'm doing my best in my life with everything going on and stress and challenges. The husband is doing his best to be the best husband he could be. The wife is doing the best she could be to be her best. Like, we're all just people trying to be the best. And there's something incredibly real about it. It's authentic. And to come back to that word, it's vulnerable. Living in our community, in the Frum community, it's not so easy to be real. There's a lot of pressure. There's a pressure to be social pressure, religious pressure, financial pressure. There's all sorts of pressures that we have that we deal with every single day. And to just be our real selves is not so simple. But I think that when we talk about every relationship, literally every relationship we're in, the more real we are, the better we feel. And I'll give you an example. Think of your friends that you went to yeshiva with, friends you went to seminary with, friends that you live on your block, friends that you went to wherever, people that you know but you're close with. I think the ones that you enjoy spending time with, I could say for sure the ones I enjoy spending time with, are the ones that I could be real with, the ones that I could be me with, the ones that I don't have to dress a certain way, I don't have to talk a certain way, I don't have to sound a certain way, look a certain way. I could just be me, all my milas, all my chesronos. I could just be myself around these people. Those are people I enjoy spending time with. When I do spend time with those people, I feel good afterwards. I feel good about myself. I feel good about that experience. When I have, unfortunately, the opposite experience, when I'm around people who I have to be careful what I say, I have to be careful what I do, I have to be careful what I wear, all those things, all of a sudden, those aren't people that I want to spend time around. Those aren't people that are fun to be around. They're not looking people to be around more. So I think for sure in the world of friendship and colleagues and work partners and neighbors, we see how important it is to be real and how healthy and helpful it is to be real with other people. I think we're not going to talk so much tonight, I think, about dating, but I'll just throw it out there that when we talk about dating, it's a very big deal to be vulnerable and to be real. When I speak to young men and women who are dating, I tell them this all the time. If you, the boy, are the boy that your Rebbe thinks you should be, and the boy that your parents think you should be, and the boy that you think the girl wants you to be, and that boy goes out with the girl, and the girl is who her parents think she should be, and who her teachers think she should be, and who she thinks the boy wants her to be. So those 2 fake people can get married, and that's beautiful. But what about Lamaisa, the Chassan Kala? Where is their relationship? Where is their shalom bayis? They have to go on these dates being themselves, like I said, with all their milas, all their chesronos and everything, she'ifas, whatever it is. Again, we'll talk about vulnerability. There's so many pieces here. And it's a tremendous challenge, but we talk about marriage tonight. It really starts when you're a kid. It starts when you're a teenager. And for sure, when you're dating, being a real person on the dates, showing up as who you are is going to be the first step in building an important relationship, a marital relationship. And if we talk about marriage, obviously it's going to be a big focus tonight. We're talking about being vulnerable. It's not a simple thing. It's a little bit easier. It's understandable. We're all human. It's easier to be critical. It's easier to be defensive. It's easier to blame people, get upset. It's a very natural reaction. It makes a lot of sense. But if we could push ourselves, if we could be real, we could transform all of our communication, especially with our spouse. We could start to communicate from over here, like Coach Menachem said, from a place of feeling, to really share with a person. This is how I feel, not this is what you did wrong. This is why I'm so angry at you. Yeah, that's all logical. It makes sense. But if we could be vulnerable, if we could be real for a minute, we open up our heart and say, this is what I'm feeling. This is what I was feeling. This is what I am feeling. This is what I want to be feeling. This is my wish. This is my hope. This is my dream. All of a sudden, it opens up our partner, our spouse who loves us, to a whole different side of us. And I'll just close with one example of this, a real life example. It was one of the first couples that I ever saw. It was maybe the second or third case that I ever did EFT with. And it was a couple that was suffering a lot. They were having a lot of issues in their marriage. It was really, they were coming to me as a last resort. Unfortunately, they had been through a lot individually and as a couple. And I remember this moment so clearly, because again, like that training, it just caught my attention. And I was talking to them and trying to get in that case specifically with the husband, and the husband was having a hard time opening up. And finally, after a bunch of sessions, we got him to open up to his feelings and to say, I just feel, he started tearing up. He said, I just feel so hopeless about this relationship. I said, I totally hear you. I totally get it. I want you to now turn to your spouse and tell her that. So he said, what? You want me to tell my spouse that I feel hopeless? I said, yeah, I do. So he did it. And then as EFT goes, we process it and we talk about it. And I said to him, how was that? How was that to tell your spouse that you feel hopeless? He says, it was terrible. I just told my spouse that I don't feel good about our marriage. I said, let's check with your wife. I said to her, how was that to hear? She said, amazing. And he looks at her, what? That was amazing. I just told you I don't feel good. I feel hopeless about the state of our marriage. And she said, yeah, but for the first time in years, I'm seeing the real you. You're communicating with me, not what you think I want to hear, not some just cell phone distract. Like, you're actually talking to me from your heart. And as terrible as the words that you're saying are, and that as bad as it sounds, the feeling behind it, the realness, taking off all those masks and layers, feels so good to see the real you for the first time in years. So that's really what we're talking about tonight. We're talking about being real. We're talking about being vulnerable. Through that, we could hopefully achieve a better level of communication with our friends, with our children, with our parents, and especially with our spouses. And Yitz Hashem, we'll get into it tonight, but really this is the idea, this is the theme we're talking about. We're talking about feelings, we're talking about authenticity, being real, and hopefully leading to a much higher, more effective way of communicating with the people we love.
Okay, Givaldik, Dr. Avi, appreciate that. Again, we're here. Anybody has live questions, please text us your partners over here. Live questions go first. If you want to send the questions, we could try to get to it. A lot of questions did come in. We have Dr. Avi here, is one of the best in this circle of EFT. I certified that. I did it with my EFT background check. So if you have a guy who's here and wants to help, ask you questions, and let's really get cleared. We're going to take first a poll, let everybody answer anonymous. Let's get a feeling, and then we'll jump into the questions, okay? Here we go. The 3-question poll. Answer to the best of your ability. Hold on. Okay, first question is, what is the number one struggle in your marriage? From these 3 options, which one would you choose? Connecting emotionally, disagreements regarding raising children. We have different perspectives on life. 3 simple answers. Which one do you choose? Number 2, 4 answers. What do you wish you have learned before getting married? First option, effective communication and active listening skills. B, understanding yourself and your emotions better. C, how to compromise and flexibility in marriage. Or D, how to balance my own needs and desires with the needs and desires of my partner. Third question, what is the most challenging topic to discuss with your spouse? 4 options. Number 1, finances and how to manage them effectively. Number 2, dealing and raising our children, and it's supposed to say parenting styles. Number 3, private struggles and having trust and honesty in our relationship. Number 4, household responsibilities. Who's responsible for what? Just general, managing things. Those are the 3 questions. Answer them, and then we'll review them. Avi, good questions?
Great questions.
Okay, let's go. You gonna tell everybody what you choose, Avi, or are you gonna keep it private?
I can't access the whole poll here. I can only see the first one, so I'll go with that one.
Let's let everybody vote, and then we'll see what everybody says, and then we'll do a little chazar on it, and then we'll jump into the questions. Okay?
Sounds good. Can I see that? Oh, there we go.
Five, 4, 3, 2. Is that your final answer? Okay, we're going to stop the poll and we're going to share with everybody. Here we go. So the first question was, what is the number one struggle in your marriage? Avi, 66% of people here tonight said connecting emotionally. So that by far tells you why we're here tonight. 14% disagreements regarding raising children. 20% we have different perspectives on life. Any comment, or should we go to the next one?
Yeah, it's a trick question. It's 100% have difficulty connecting emotionally. The other two are, just misunderstandings of the fact that they don't realize they're just struggling with their connection. But okay.
Okay, I like that.
We'll get
Number
there.
2, what do you wish you have learned before getting married? Very interesting, split a little bit. 22% of people say effective communication and active listening skills. 33% said understanding yourself and your emotions better. Only 6% said how to compromise and flexibility in a marriage. And 38% say how to balance my own needs and desires with the needs and desires of my partner.
That's interesting. So again, there I'm going to cheat and say that the last one of balancing needs could be done better with communication, effective communication. I love that second one. I love understanding yourself and your emotions better. To be honest, I mentioned before, sometimes when I do like dating talks, this is a big deal to me, is when you date, you better know yourself first, because your whole marriage is based on the fact that you have some sort of stable identity first, and then marriage flows from there. So I love that that's a choice, and I appreciate that people said that.
Okay, the last question. Interesting, also very interesting results. Wow. What is the most challenging topic to discuss with your spouse? 20% finances and how to manage them effectively. 22% dealing and raising our children with different parenting styles. 48% of people, private struggles and having trust and honesty in our relationship. And only 10% household responsibilities and who's responsible for what. Avi, what do you say to that one?
Yeah, I mean, that again, we see certain common themes, but that's interesting, and I guess it's hard to hear that people are struggling, bitsina, that's something they're doing privately, but it's not surprising. It's not surprising, and that's what we're here to do.
Okay, so that's it. We're going to stop this. Let's jump into the questions. Again, anybody wants to ask live, please jump on the bandwagon over here, text us, and we're going to jump into some questions, okay? Reb Avi, let's grill you. Here we go. First question. As someone who has been married for 3 years, I'm feeling a little uncertain about the state of my marriage. My spouse and I seem to get into disagreements way too often. I'm starting to wonder if we're on the right path or the wrong path. I don't want to constantly be fighting on every little thing that comes up between us. It's exhausting and it's not sustainable in the long run. I'm feeling lost and I'm not sure what steps to take to improve our situation. I want to find a way to communicate better with my spouse and work together towards a happier and more peaceful future together.
Okay, so obviously, like I've been saying, communication is everything here. And the fact that it's been 3 years, to be honest, is good news, because there's still a lot of time. You're still very early in the marriage. To me, 3 years is still Shana Rishona. It's fine. And whether or not that person needs professional intervention or not, I can't say for sure, but it has to start from a place of communication. And let's talk a little bit about what that means. We're talking about EFT, we're talking about vulnerability, we're talking about communication. Let's talk a little bit.
I just want to clarify. I want you to really clarify what EFT is, and even in this question, if we could try to use an example, a real life, like how it would actually work.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we're talking about in EFT is we're talking about the fact that when we feel a certain way, okay, let's go back a little further. There is a belief that I believe strongly, I think it's Dvarim Pshutim, to be honest, that we all desperately want to be connected to somebody else. That's something that we know for sure is true about children. Nobody in the last 60 years has questioned, it used to be questioned, but nobody in the last 60 years questions that a baby wants to be held, that a little child wants to be nurtured, children love attention. That we know for sure, that we see with our own children or just children around us. Kids love attention. What's not so understood and appreciated is that adults also love attention. We do. We love attention. We love to be liked. We love to be loved. And we love to be cared for by other people. Now, like Coach Menachem was saying at the beginning, we get a little queasy when we talk about feelings, and we certainly get very queasy when we talk about feeling needed, feeling loved. That's an uncomfortable conversation to have. But to be honest, it's 100% true that every single person, it's built into the Bria, every single person has a need to connect to somebody else. That's just how it is. We know, we feel it in our life when our spouse finally does see us, whether it was when we were dating, hopefully when we were married. You feel rich, you feel good that somebody sees you, somebody cares about you. It's the most amazing feeling in the world. And studies have showed that loneliness is as good for your health as smoking cigarettes. It's just, We need other people in our lives. Okay, that's step one. So now what? So what happens is in a marriage, in a relationship, we want that from our spouse. We're always hoping to be close to them. We always want to be seen. We always want to be heard. And that, the example I always give is think about a little kid. We started with little kids. Think about a little kid walking 20 feet in front of his mother. Let's say he's 6, 7 years old, something like that, maybe 5 years old. And he's walking in front of his mother and he says, Mommy, I'm going to go by myself. I'm going to go by myself. So he starts walking by himself and the mother says, okay, go. And then what's the first thing the kid does when he makes it 20 feet in front of his mother? What's the first thing he does? He turns around to make sure that his mother's still there. That's what we're talking about. We want to make sure that whenever we look over our shoulder, that connecting person is still there. So that doesn't stop now that we get married, now that we're adults, it doesn't go away. When we're adults, now we still have that feeling. And when we're with our spouse or whoever it is, we're looking over our shoulder like, are you still there? Are you still paying attention to me? Do you still care about me? As soon as we don't feel that, things start to go poorly. As soon as I look over my shoulder and I don't see you there, all of a sudden I don't feel good about our relationship. And when I don't feel good about our relationship, I do something, I protest. I could yell and scream. That's one form of protesting. I could tell you how bad you are, what a bad spouse you are, how angry I am. I could yell at you. I could do all sorts of negative behaviors in that way. Or I could do the opposite. I could run away from you. I could just shut down, withdraw, pull back, move away from you. And that's a second way I could do it. Those are the two main steps I could take when I'm feeling like I'm looking over my shoulder for you. I'm reaching out my hand for you and you're not there taking it. It's a devastating feeling. I want nothing more than to be able to reach my hand and you take it. And when I reach and you're not there, I feel so empty. I feel so alone. So I either get upset at you outwardly or I get upset at you inwardly and I pull away. There's no gender stereotypes, but if we had to do statistics, typically the woman is the one who is more outwardly protesting, and a man is the one who's typically more pulling away. But there's many, many couples that are the other way around too. So what's the point? What are we talking about? So when this goes on, a month, 2 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years, this cycle happens, it starts to weigh on you. You start to feel after 3 years like you're going the wrong direction. We were trying to go in the right direction. We were trying to spend date nights and have a good time together. But every time one of us needs something, we reach for a connection, it goes poorly. I come home from work and I just want you to ask me, how was your day? And when you don't do that, I just feel like, oh, she doesn't even care. And then she tells me, she wants to tell me all about what was going on with the kids and this one and that one. And I'm looking down at my phone answering work emails. So now she feels, oh, and I'm trying to reach to him and he's not there. So we both get lost in our own worlds. We both disconnect from each other. And that just gets worse and worse. Now I get angry. Why are you on your phone? You get angry at me. Why are you not answering? Why are you not available? So we're both having this negative experience with each other that just deepens and deepens and deepens with time. What if we could flip that and dig deeper? What if we could look inside ourselves and instead of saying, why are you always on your phone? You would be able, like I said at the beginning, to be vulnerable. Let's say you could say, I really want to talk to you. It was a long day with the kids, with work, with whatever. It was a hard day. And I just want you to hear about it. I just want you, give me 7 minutes. Just please, just be there for me. I want to just know that you care about my day. If we could talk in that way, where the person knows that you want connection, instead of the person feeling attacked and blamed and judged and criticized, all of a sudden it opens up the other person to empathy. I think I said at the beginning, I don't know whether this case requires professional intervention, but let's go back now. The answer is let's try it. I don't know whether it needs professional help. Let's try it. Let's start by saying to our spouse, I really want to be close to you. I really want to be there with you. I want to hear about your day. I want you to hear about my day. Whatever the moment is, there's so many moments that come up. I mean, I'm trying to think of my own couples where they have this, like, the most typical examples are just things like that. Family, work, kids, like these things are difficult, you go through so much stress throughout the day. We spoke about the stress that it takes to be a frum Jew in 2023 with finances and work, and young couples have two people who are working 40+ hour weeks. There are people spending tons and tons of time with their kids, which is amazing, but it takes a lot out of you. So just say, I wish we could talk about my day. I want to tell you about what happened with my boss. I want to tell you this story about what our neighbor said to me that was really hurtful. and to just be able to reach out to the other in an honest and emotional way, instead of getting lost in the you did this, you did that. What I call that intellectual, like you said this, no, but I said that. No, let's watch let's pull out like the Alexa and see if she recorded who said what, and we could go back to the tape and see who said, like, no, I don't care who said what. Let's zoom in on right now. How are you feeling? You're feeling disconnected? Great. Tell your spouse, I'm not feeling good. I need your help. I want to be close to you. When we talk from that place, that tends to land very differently than when we talk from the place of criticism, of attack, of defense. Again, I'm not saying it's easy, and we could talk more about this as we go on, but that's the goal. The goal is try to communicate from that place, talk from a place of honest emotions, openness, connection, and see how that goes. If there's something that's blocking you from talking in that way, if there's something that's blocking your spouse from listening and hearing that, okay, then maybe it's time for a more professional intervention. That's fine, but at least give it a try. Start trying to talk in that way and see how that goes.
Exactly. Beautiful. Okay, we're gonna go with the first live question. You're on.
Yeah, hi. You hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Question. I'm 30 and I haven't started shluchim yet because of mental health issues. I wasn't ready yet. I think I'm starting to get ready. The only thing that's really overwhelming me is like the whole process of needing to get dressed up and wearing fancy clothes. And really, like, I'm like a simple person. I'm just like, I gotta be fine. As long as I look put together and I get my hair done maybe and just have makeup on, I'm totally fine. But I know, like, in in the dating world, you have to be fancy and get just I don't know. I'm just like, I don't like shopping for clothes. Also, I'm just not that tight. Can I just be real and dress with weekday clothes, but of course being put together, or do I have to like get a little fancy? Like, or is that if I don't get all fancy, is that considered not not within the norms? Just curious. Like, how can I be my real? I want to be real, like not, yeah.
So that's a great question. I love that question. And I was thinking about that question actually today. So I'm glad that somebody else is thinking about that. I think the answer is that there's a difference between the best version of yourself versus a fake version of yourself, if that makes sense. And what I mean by that is, yes, on a date, like I spoke at the beginning about when you're dating, you have to be real, because I believe that very, very much. At the other hand, that doesn't mean you show up to your first date, in a t-shirt and shorts, and it's all very comfortable in my pajamas because
Avi, I muted you. Just unmute yourself. Sorry, my mistake.
Did any of that get in, or we have to start from the beginning?
The pajamas.
Pajama, right? Okay, so I don't show up in my pajamas. We get that. That's not a good idea. So we have to wear nice clothing because, yeah, that's a certain protocol. That we go on a date, we want to be our best selves. But there's a difference, I still think, between our best self of like the best version of us versus a fake version of something that's not us. We get into all these questions on dating, like what you should wear. I think you should wear, like, meaning I'll give you a very simple example, then we'll get a little bit more nuanced. A simple example is wear the nicest clothing that you have. Don't borrow your friend's clothing that's not, that's not you. I had a good friend who, when we were dating, he didn't love his car. Not going to be Meirich, but I'm even Yavin. He didn't love his car. So he used to borrow cars for dates. He used to borrow nicer looking cars and would go on his dates like that. Eventually, true story, went out with a few girls like that. Eventually, he realized, you know what? I don't need that. I'm going to go out with my car that I drive, where the ceiling is kind of like in your head as you're driving. And it's fine. And if a girl can't deal with that, then she shouldn't really be marrying me. And I think, I don't want to say mifsim here, but I think the next girl he dated in that car, he married. And there's just something about that, I was talking to a client this week about whatever, something like this. I don't want to get into too many details, but I said to him, the girl who's going to marry you is going to marry you. Like with that chisaron, like don't worry so much. Again, you want to be your best self. You want to put on a nice suit, take a shower, shave. Like, of course, you want to look like a mensch. You don't want to walk into a date looking like a shlum. But no, either A, no girl is going to, whatever girl is going to want to marry is going to marry you. Or B, like I said at the beginning, if the only reason she married you is because of this, this thing you did, then who is she marrying? She's not marrying you. She's marrying that version of you. It's not real. So to answer your question, I think it's a tricky balance. I agree. But I think we want to be the best version of us. Even when we talk about other examples I was thinking of, like opening the door and car and this, and like all these different subtle things that come up on dates, how nice to be. You should be as nice as you are. If you're the kind of person who would do a chesed for a person, you would, whatever, open the door, whatever these different details are. So then do that on a date. But if you're not, it's certainly fake to all of a sudden, for this next 3 hours, I'm going to be the most amazing Balmidus, I'm going to be the Chafetz Chaim. And then once the date is over, now I go back to being, whoever. So I think that you could be the best version of yourself. Dress as nice as is reasonable. You don't go crazy shopping. Buy clothing that fits you. And I don't mean fits your body. I mean fits your personality, fits your style. It's consistent with who you are. Don't all of a sudden dress with clothing that you would never in a million years wear to any event. But now for this 3-hour date, you're going to wear. But with that said, wear clean, nice, good clothing that's matim for you, that, brings out your best. And I think that, to me, is the balance of how to best approach dating. But I love the question. I think that's the answer.
I just want to take it to the next notch. Some people feel they want to be real. Let's say they're married in 10 years and they're not in a good mood. So they're just going to come bashing into the house, being real in a bad mood, which I think you could say the same thing. Sometimes it's okay not to be real. Do you agree?
Yeah, so I think it's a balance. Like, meaning, yes, you're right. It's not good to be real if real means you're just lashing out and being mean to everybody. I think you're allowed to be, for example, in a bad mood. Like if you come home from work and you're in a bad mood, you're cranky, like, okay, you're allowed to be cranky. It's not pleasant, it's not fun, but we've all been there, both on the giving side and the receiving side of it. Again, I agree with you, but there has to be certain lines where you say, okay, I'm not gonna be mean, I'm not going to be hurtful, I'm not going to say things that are mean and hurtful to other people, but am I allowed to put my guard down a little bit and say that this was really hard, I really struggling to get along with this person, that you might not say if you were on a Sunday evening Zoom? Yeah, I think that's fair. You could be more comfortable with your spouse with a line, 100%.
Exactly. Avi, somebody just texted me this question. It's a deep one. We're jumping a little deep, but it's a good question. You ready? Okay, I've been married over 10 years and I've been in individual therapy for almost that long as well. I've been in marital therapy as well. Baruch Hashem, we've gotten somewhere. My husband says he loves me and cares about me and thinks the world of me. This is not reciprocated by me. I suffer from child emotional neglect and have a very low self-esteem. His love just doesn't do it for me. It's really painful that I'm trying so hard and not getting to a place where I could feel love and reciprocate it. I can feel the love through my support system. I want to be able to feel the love. How could I do that?
So these are hard situations. These are hard situations where one or both people have been through a lot in their life, and this whole process becomes more difficult. I think that the answer to these situations is going to be that you have to take it very, very slow. And individual therapy is very good and very well advised there. I remember, I had a couple recently, and the woman specifically had been through a lot in her life. She was a wonderful woman. She was articulate. She was smart, but she had been through a lot of negative experiences, and she couldn't even talk about those experiences. And when we got into the therapy room, the three of us together, me with her and her husband, it was hard for her to even begin to talk about, like this person asking you the question. She couldn't believe that the husband had positive feelings. It's a very hard thing. So the first answer is the individual therapy is a wonderful way to go, because that's necessary. Couples therapy is for couples, individual therapy is for individuals. Neither one of them could solve everything. So in this case, to be totally honest, what happened was the couple came to me for a few months, and then at a certain point I told them we have to take a break, and she had to go to individual therapy because she was not in individual therapy. Then they came back to me and we continued to work, but it's still hard. So what's the answer in that situation? It's very, very hard, but it really starts with one little step, one small step for, let's say, whoever it is. I don't remember if it was a man or a woman in the question, but the person who has struggling to feel loved and to feel these things has to do his best or her best. If they can, if they can't, they can't. But they have to try to do their best to really open up about that. Say to your spouse, I'm having a hard time feeling loved. And it's important for the spouse to understand that's not personal. I'm just gonna, if it's, did the person say the gender?
The person is the woman. That's what it sounds like.
I'm gonna go with that. It makes it easier to have a gender. Fine. So the woman has to,
that her husband is giving her love. She said her husband.
okay, good. So let's say the woman has to do her best in that case, if she can. She has to do her best to express to her husband that he's doing great, but that she just is not feeling love. It's not because a chisaron in him, he's not communicating poorly, he's not doing any of the wrong behaviors, but she's having a hard time. And that's, again, I'm right now I'm putting the achrayus on her, but it's really an achrayus on both of them, because what happens in those situations very often, and this is like what makes EFT so tricky, is very often the husband will say something. Again, in this example, the husband says, I love you, I care about you, you're the most important person in the world to me. And she doesn't reciprocate, she doesn't respond because she has all of her own history that's really hard for her. And what happens in those situations is the husband starts to feel bad about himself. Now, that's not only his wife's fault, that's also, he has to have the inner confidence to know that he's doing everything right. But what happens is, as soon as he starts to feel that he's doing something wrong, then he starts to get angry, then she gets angry, then he gets angry, and we go back and forth to that cycle that we spoke about before. So both of them need to sort of like pull themselves above this cycle from happening. It's not going to solve everything, but it's the first step, is that she would ideally be able to say something like, listen, I know you love me, I know that you're doing everything right, you're saying everything right, you're showing everything right. At the end of the day, I've been through a lot, and to no fault of your own, it's really hard for me to believe that you love me. It's just like I struggle with my inner voices, I struggle with my inner demons to really believe that I'm worth loving. And again, that's a powerful conversation. It's real, it's honest, it's vulnerable, it's emotional, and hopefully that reaches him. And alternatively, it's on, like I said, the achrayus is also on him. He can say, listen, I'm doing my best to be loving, I'm doing my best to be caring, supportive, I'm trying to show you everything, and it looks like it's not working. Not to get angry, why won't you? No, I think I'm doing my best, but it looks like it's not working. It looks like you're not responding. Is there something that's blocking you? Is there something that's wrong, that reason that my love is not reaching you? Now, we didn't solve everything, but now we're having a conversation about exactly this point. Now we're talking about why it's hard for her to feel loved, why it's difficult for him to express it and not have her respond. Now we're having a real honest conversation between the two of them, instead of her just saying, no, I'm damaged, I can't feel love. And he says, what do you want from me? I'm doing my best. That's where these things tend to go. But as soon as each of them tries to reverse the script a little bit, where she talks about what makes it so hard, even though she appreciates what he's doing, and he says he appreciates her honesty, but it's hard for him, even though he thinks he's doing his best. Now we're having a little bit of a different conversation. Hopefully that conversation starts to go a little bit better and turn things in a little bit of a different direction.
Okay, Dr. Avi, somebody sends a very interesting question. I'm going to jump to it. Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
Man, hi. My question is, I really want more attention from my wife. She's usually busy or tired. What bothers me the most is all the time she spends on her phone instead of spending time with me. I've explained to her and asked her, it always feels like I'm bothering her. What could I do? And then he sends me a follow-up. To be clear, the crux of my question is, how do I tell her I'm craving her attention without feeling desperate? I feel she gets annoyed and turned off when I'm desperate.
Okay, I'm happy he added that last piece, because that's going to be part of the answer too. But let's take a second to talk about technology, because that's a very popular topic. I see it all the time in my couples. Which spouse, we could make this a poll question, which spouse is on their phone more often? Do you know the answer?
About woman, but okay, I don't know.
The answer is the other one, not me. Right? Everybody always thinks that their spouse is always on their phone. They're never on their phone. Fine. This is Ma'aseh B'chol Yom. We see it all the time. And let's just be honest about that. We're on our phones plenty. It's not just our spouse. We only see it and appreciate it when it's our spouse. Rabbeinu Yonah talks about that fine. About Knei L'Chachaver, you need a friend to be able to call you out without the biases. But okay, what's the point here? So the point is, it feels like his spouse is always on the phone. It feels like she's always distracted. He wants to reach for her without sounding desperate. So I really alluded to this at the beginning, which is it's not so comfortable to say, I really want your attention. I really crave your attention. I don't know their marriage, but I don't believe that she's going to be turned off by a husband who says, I want your attention. I like, who gets turned off by somebody saying, I really want your attention. I really want to hear from you. Like, I want to see you. I want to talk to you. That's not the kind of thing that can turn somebody off. Now, if it's too much and whatever, fine. So we could talk about that. Maybe we'll get to that in this question, different question, whatever. But to reach for a spouse from the Pnimius Halev, the bottom of our heart, the depths of our heart, and to say, I want to spend time with you. Not to say you're always on your phone. Not to say you never make eye contact with me. Not to say you're always working, you're always answering emails. That's easy to say. We could do that. We could all do that. I do that. It's not hard. It takes a little bit of a depth, an avoda, to be able to look inside yourself and say, I really want this person. I really want to spend time with them. I got married to them not so that I could look at this top part of their head, but I want to see their face. And that's a real vulnerable reach. That's a real ask to make of this guy, and to say, can you do that? Can you look your wife in the eye, not when she's on her phone, on a Friday night? Can you look your wife in the eye and say, I want to spend more time with you. I want to spend more time with you. Can you do that? The answer is, I think he can, but it's difficult. You don't want to sound needy and desperate and dependent, all these words that we have succeeded as a society to make pathological. I don't believe that any of those are illnesses, mental illnesses. We're all needy, we're all dependent, we're all desperate for attention. Like I said, we know that kids are desperate for attention because they call our names 150 times at the Shabbos table. You know, look at this, look at that, look at this, look at that. But adults are just as desperate. We're just more socially savvy at covering it up and hiding it and making it look like we don't need other people. But at the end of the day, like I said, we're all a bunch of children. We're always looking over our shoulder to see how our spouse is looking at us and paying attention to us. So this guy, first and foremost, needs to know that it's not desperate. It's not a turnoff to your wife to look like you want to have a relationship with her. One piece that I'll add, one other, part of this, again, there's a lot of layers to this, but one thing I'll throw out there is you have to know timing here. We could talk a lot about timing. Timing is very, very important in these relationships. For example, if your wife is on her phone, now is actually the worst time to tell her that you want to have a relationship with her without her being on her phone. She's on her phone, right now let her be on her phone. You're upset, so be upset. That's fine. That's fine. Right now she's on her phone, let it be. But like I said, come that quiet time, whether that's Shabbos, I always tell this to couples, everybody has different things. For some people, Shabbos is the quietest time. For some people, Shabbos is the busiest time. For some people, in my Lashon, I call Monday morning like the busiest time. But for some people, Monday morning is benachas. So you find your time that's benachas, where your wife is not on her phone. And that's when you say to her, I want to tell you that I really want to have a relationship with you. And sometimes it's hard for me because it feels like you're on your phone a lot. And maybe you're not. Maybe I'm on my phone more than you are, which again, it's a vulnerable thing to do, but I like it. Maybe I'm on my phone more than you are, but I notice it when you're on your phone. I don't notice it when I'm on my phone. And I really want to have that relationship. So at 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 7 o'clock, when you're home from work and I'm home from work, whatever it is, and I see you on your phone, I just want you to know that I'm hurting because I really just want to be close to you. And then we're opening up conversations. It doesn't mean the wife is going to just throw her phone in the ocean. Like she might say, no, I need to be on my phone at those hours. My boss expects me to respond to emails until 9 o'clock at night. Okay, fine. But now we're having a conversation. She gets it, hopefully. She gets that he's reaching for her. And then the example of the phone becomes not so important. So maybe you're on the phone, maybe you're not on the, whatever. We can work it out. 9 o'clock, we'll start our conversation instead of 7 o'clock. Or like a Shabbos, we'll have a 2-hour conversation. And that'll be our time to catch up. Whatever the details are, don't matter to me. But now we're having a real conversation. Now we're really communicating. The husband is expressing his term desperate. I love it. We're all desperate. Tell your wife how desperate you are, but don't tell her while she's in the middle of an email. It's not the best time. Wait till the moment passes. Wait till, like I said, it's Shabbos or Tuesday or Friday, whatever it is for each person, for each couple. And at that point, sit down and have a conversation. I love you. I married you because I want to spend time with you. I would love if we could have some time every night where the phones are in a drawer. Maybe it's at 7 o'clock, maybe it's at 9 o'clock, maybe it's at 11 o'clock. Like I said, each couple could do their own thing. But when we talk in that way, it all of a sudden starts to sound different. It starts to land differently. And hopefully that conversation goes a lot better and it's much easier then.
Now what happens if she says that my husband is so needy? And if she tells it to him, that's probably the reason why he's not going to say it again, because he knows if he tells her, I want your, connection, she's going to just push it right back in his face.
So to me, again, needy is not a curse word. Needy is a good thing. We're all needy. I want to understand if a woman says, my husband is too needy, or a husband says my wife is too needy, I want to know what that means. The word needy is just like whatever. It's a 5-letter word. What does that mean? He's too needy. Like, you don't have time for him? Okay. So let's talk about what time you do have for him. I find, again, if we want to jump to the bottom of the ocean here and the depths of the souls, I find that very often when a spouse says, and this is not my own chiddush, this is a big EFT hashkafa, but when a spouse says, my spouse is too needy for me, if we spend, and I'm going to save everybody like 8 weeks of EFT therapy here, where after 8 sessions, what we usually find out about that person is what they really mean. Like if they really get to the bottom of their kishkas, the depths of their soul, what they really mean is, I'm afraid that I'm not going to be there for you enough. That's it. It's not about you. It's about me. I'm afraid that I'm not enough for you. I'm not able to keep up with you, that your needs are greater than what I can give you. And I feel terrible about myself that I can't give you as much as you need. Not that you're a bad, needy person. I'm not here to pathologize you. My real fear is by looking in the mirror. It's that I am not going to be available enough as a spouse to give you your emotional needs. And that's a very scary feeling. That's the feeling that gets translated when they say it out loud. They say, you're too needy, you're too desperate, you need too much of me, leave me alone, you're suffocating me. Those are all the terms that we're used to hearing out there in the world. But what their inner neshama is really saying at that point is, I really want to give you everything, and I'm afraid that I won't be able to. I'm afraid that I'm going to come up short in providing for you, and that's painful for me. They don't want to feel that pain, so they say something else instead.
Is it possible that they mean to say it's too hard for me? It's too hard for me.
It feels like it's too hard. I don't know if it's really too hard, but it feels like it's too hard. When I see that you want to talk on Tuesday night, you want to talk on Thursday night, you want to talk on Sunday night, it feels like I'm not going to be able to ever meet your needs. And again, I'll skip ahead to the end of the EFT, the 12 weeks ahead. What the role of the spouse in that place is to just say that. When you say to that person, I've seen it, I've worked with some couples that were very tricky with this, where it felt like there was a big disconnect between what each one needed. One of them was what we'd call chilled out, very low key, low maintenance, old terms that we've maybe used or heard, doesn't have such big emotional needs. And the other one has incredible emotional needs, and they've been through a lot in life, and they feel like you're never going to get me, you're never going to understand me. And it's such a deep disconnecting feeling. It's just not a comfortable feeling to have. The goal after weeks and weeks of digging and digging and delving into this in the EFT is to get to a place where they could say this, where the husband, let's say in this case, we're talking about the husband being the quote unquote desperate one, where the husband is able to say, I just want all of you. I want your attention. I want your love. I want your care. I want your support. And the wife is able to say, yeah, I want to give you all that. I'm just afraid that I won't be able to. And when the husband hears the wife said, I'm afraid that I won't be able to provide that, instead of hearing him called needy and desperate and dependent and all those negative terms, he stops feeling bad about himself, and he could express his neediness, quote unquote, and she could express her own anxiety of not being able to provide. And now they've started to connect to each other. Instead of calling each other really powerful names that leave a tremendous mark on each of them, they start to actually connect about what each one of them needs from the other person. And it becomes a very, very powerful connection.
Mm-hmm. So here's a similar question that came in. I gave up on trying to connect with my husband a while ago, because despite my attempts, I never got the response I was hoping for. He would either dismiss what I was sharing or become edgy and unable to listen, which left me feeling misunderstood and lonely. I'm wondering if EFT can help either me or my husband to improve our ability to connect and rebuild our relationship.
So the answer is yes and yes, it definitely can. Again, I don't know the details of what she tried and what happened, but this is the avenue we're looking for. We're looking into the depths of your soul and figuring out what your need is, and hopefully your spouse is able to do the same thing, and then you connect. One of my trainers at the EFT conferences or the workshops, the way she said, I thought it was like a very good, short, concise way of explaining all 96 hours of EFT. Al regalachas. This was it, like one line. I mean, Hillel's one line of my desanilach would also help, but fine, let's take a different one line, which is, she said, the goal of EFT is you start in the world of interpersonal, meaning bein ish ishto. You then move into the intrapersonal, what we call bein ish la'atzmo, bein adam la'atzmo, and then we go back into the world of interpersonal, bein adam la'chaveiro, bein ish la'ishto. So we start with our machlokas, our fighting, our conflict, which is, I'm trying to remember your example now, was that, we're not connecting, I'm reaching out for you, it's not happening. So then we look in the mirror and each one of us talks about what's going on. I don't know in this case, has this woman reached for her husband yet? Has she sat down with him and said, it's not going well, I'm trying, and I feel like it's not working? Maybe she knows that she's trying and it's not working. I'm sure she does. That's why she's asking the question. What I don't know from the question is whether she's told that exact piece to her husband yet. And if she hasn't, that's the first place I would go, is I would share that information with him. I would sit down with him, again, find the right time, sit down with him and say, I'm trying very hard to connect with you, and I think it's going very poorly. I feel like it's not working. I've been trying and I've been reaching and I've been making attempts. I've been trying to get close with you. I've been trying to reach for you, and I feel like it's not working. Has she sat down? Again, if she hasn't, that's the first advice I would give. Sit down and have that conversation. Sit down and tell him you're trying. You want to reach for him. You're trying to connect to him, and it hasn't been going well, and it's frustrating you. How does he take it? It's very possible he'll be defensive, because most of us are. You might say, well, I'm also trying. Okay, so if that's what happens, I would say to the woman, don't respond to his criticisms and his defenses. Double down, look deeper into yourself and keep going and say, I understand you're being defensive. It makes so much sense, but I want you to know I'm not attacking you. I'm not blaming you. I'm not angry at you. I want you to know that for 3 years, I have been reaching and it hasn't been going well. I'm not telling you so that you should feel bad about yourself. I'm not telling you because I'm angry at you and I have tainas and anything like that. I'm telling you this because I want us to change. I want next time that I reach out, I want to feel like we're actually connecting. Next time I want to reach out, I want to feel like you're responding. I know that it's not your fault. I know it's not my fault. We're doing our best. So I want next time that you should know when I reach that you should be there. Not because I'm angry that you're a bad person. I don't think any of that. But I want you to know that I've been trying and it hasn't been working. And as my spouse, who I love, I need you to know that. That would be the first place I would go with that conversation. If that continues to go not well, so then that's where we talk about having some sort of EFT therapy, which is not going to be any different, but it's just going to have another person in the room to help balance. Why is the husband not responding well to that? What's, again, the word I keep using is blocking. What's blocking the husband from responding openly? Is he hearing a criticism? Why is he getting defensive? So sometimes you need a therapist just to help with that. But the strategy, the game plan with the therapist is going to be the same thing as what I hope will be that very first successful conversation, Amir Hashem, that you should have.
He's gonna say, I'm listening. We're forever talking. You always want from us. And what else do you want from me? What else do you want?
Right. I told you at the chuppah that I love you. What are we still talking about?
I know, it goes like this. I told you by the chuppah. If anything changes, I'll let you know.
Exactly. So that's what his taina is, and the answer that she's saying is correct. Correct. I always want it from you. I always want it from you. Not once, not at the chuppah, not at the Shevrach, not at the anniversary, not on my birthday. I always want to know that we're connecting. So even if we had 6 wonderful weeks in Hawaii together, amazing, and then we come back, I'm not done. I still want to, hear from you, see you, connect with you. So if I'm her, I don't respond directly to that. Like I said, I lean into that. Yes, 100% I'm on. I'm never finished. I want more of you. And again, if we say it like that, who responds poorly? Who responds poorly to saying, I want more of you. I really love you. I really want to spend more time. That's not something that we take poorly. We take poorly when we get scared that it's going to be too much, like we discussed, fine. Or we respond poorly when we hear attack. When we hear, you're not doing a good job, you're not a good spouse, you don't care about me. So when we hear the you, then we're like, well, what do you want from me? I'm doing my best. And then we get into our defensive mode and the whole thing goes off the rails. But if we could just sit down for a second, each of us, whichever one we're talking about, the husband, the wife, whatever, and we could just be honest, be present, pause for a minute and listen and speak from the heart and listen to the heart, all of a sudden it becomes a very different conversation.
Well, okay, Reb Shlomo, let's go.
Okay, so my question, first of all, thank you for all the information. It's amazing, amazing information. My question is very simple. Do you marry somebody because you love them, or do you marry someone because you see there is potential to love them?
I hope I'm not going to get in trouble. My answer to that is the first one. I know that that's controversial. I've given this talk places and people yell at me. I believe the answer is the first one. I never, ever, first of all, would advise a chassan or kala to marry somebody based on potential. That to me is a disaster waiting to happen. I would never, ever advise a person to marry because one day that's already a bad start. But the first answer to me is very clear. You marry somebody because you love them. What is real love? Oh, fine. So we could talk about this for hours. I have spoken about this for hours. But I believe that you marry somebody when you start to feel that this connection that we're talking about, you have to start to feel it before you get married. And then you spend the next 75 years watering it and growing it and developing it into a beautiful tree. That's not my mushel, that's the Malbim who says that. The goal is we take a little seed, a little plant, a seed of love, and it grows into a beautiful flower, a beautiful tree, whatever it is. But we can't take nothing, put it in the ground and water it, and then all of a sudden a beautiful tree grows. So we have to have real feelings. In my opinion, I know it's controversial, I apologize, but I believe very, very strongly, and unfortunately I've seen too many times in my marriage experience, the other side, when people get married without having feelings for each other. And unfortunately, my experience is very bad with that. You have to have some kind of connection that really makes this whole thing work. And then we build it, and then we, again, engaged couples come to me. It's fine. There's not a lot of a connection there, but it doesn't matter. There's like the seeds. They want more. They're looking to get closer. That's beautiful. That's great. We could build 75 wonderful years off of that. But it has to be that. If there's literally nothing, if it's just like, oh, there's a lot of potential. I'm not even going to say all the things I want to say now. This person thinks it's a great idea. This person told me that, like, if I marry this person, I should be so lucky to marry this person. That's not good. I don't, yeah. Okay.
Wow, you ready for the $1 million question?
Yeah.
Okay. Here's the $1 million question. I'm expecting the answer in less than 2 sentences. You ready?
Okay, let's do it.
Here we go. It can be challenging to be vulnerable to unhealthy people. And the person who wrote a specific thing, I don't want to write it. I'm writing unhealthy, and you could break it how you want. And I believe that my spouse may fall into that category. I'm not sure what to do or how to approach the situation. Do you have any recommendations on how to handle this? Now, unhealthy is very broad, so take it from there.
Okay, I don't need 2 sentences. I'll just say 2 words. It depends. Is that good?
Okay, next question.
It's a very hard question. It's really, my heart goes out to everybody I know is probably one person submitted that question, but I'm sure many people feel that question. It's a hard situation, and there's no easy answer to that, which I think is why you're saying it should be 2 sentences, because you understand that it's obviously a very hard question. The answer is really, though, it depends. Every situation is different. And like you said, unhealthy is a very general word. So we're not going to talk about diagnosis. It's not important, but there's different levels of unhealthy. So somebody unhealthy, they're never receptive. They're sometimes receptive. They're always, I guess they're not always receptive. They're sometimes receptive. They're never receptive. Are they abusive? What does abusive mean? Verbally abusive, physically abusive. There's so many possibilities in that word unhealthy. And the answer is it depends. I am a big believer in human beings. That's why I do EFT, as I've sort of hinted at throughout this discussion, is I really believe in people. I believe in the good in everyone. And I've seen people who are not so easy to work with do some incredible things. When you really can take somebody who's been through a lot. I've had clients who are both on second, third marriages and have been through other sorts of traumas, and it feels like you can't do it, and you do it anyways, and it's very, very powerful. Like that, the mushel we always give is that game. I don't know if it has a name, but that game you play like in camp or something where you fall backwards and somebody has to catch you. So there's all these like funny clips where like people do that and they fall. Fine. But that's really what marriage is. Really, relationships don't make any sense. We fall backwards and we ask our spouse to catch us, and they don't. They let us hit the ground. So any normal person would just say, okay, have a good Shabbos, I'm done. But what we human beings do is we continue to trust our spouse. And we fall back again, and we hope that they're going to catch us this time, and we land again on our back, and it's very painful. And again, any normal seichel person would say, okay, that's it. 2 times you fell, let's move on. But we don't do that. We don't use our seichel in relationships. And to be honest, that's what I love. I love that we don't give up. I love that human beings never give up on other human beings. I think it's a tremendous chizuk, to be honest. Like it's awesome.
Till what number? Till what number? That
Never.
they fall to the floor?
Never.
It hurts.
People saw that we keep going. It doesn't matter how many times we fall. We continue to trust other people. I mean, I'll give you a real example. Like in a very healthy marriage, how many times has our spouse let us down? Like the answer is tons, not 3, 4, 5 times, tons. In the healthiest of marriages, if you're married 50 years, your spouse let you down a few hundred times. And if we're talking about somebody who's unhealthy, then multiply that by 10 or 100 or whatever it is. You know, they let us down multiple times a day, an hour, whatever. So it's very difficult and it's very painful. And I love the fact that we don't give up on other people. We keep trying.
But it's only if you have in between something to hold on to.
Right. So
But
that's where it
it's
gets
only-
tricky. There are points, again, we're being honest here. There are points when you do have to let go. There are points when you do have to know that it's too much and that the pain you're being caused is just like infinite, and the reward you're getting is either nothing or close to nothing. There are times that you have to just know that. How do you know that? I can't give a great answer to that. Sometimes it's helpful to have an outside person help you with that. Sometimes you just know in your heart that it's Higi Azman, it's enough. There are times when it's too much, and that doesn't mean that the relationship has to be over. Again, each situation is so different. It's hard to talk so broadly, but in those situations, sometimes you have to just move on, and moving on could mean getting divorced. Moving on could mean not getting divorced. It could mean that you just make a decision that I'm not going to be vulnerable in this relationship anymore. It's going to be what it's going to be. And it's certainly not an ideal marriage. Obviously, the way I'm speaking about vulnerability, I don't love the idea of a marriage without vulnerability. But okay, if you've been burned too many times, and again, I can't say what the number is, but if you, and ideally I would speak to somebody, whether it's a Rav, whether it's a therapist, whether it's ideally somebody who's not gay bedavar, because biases are going to mess you up here. But if you speak to somebody that's, like I said, a Rav, a therapist who knows what they're talking about, and they really hear that you've tried and you've done every angle and every option, and you've been so clear with your spouse about what you need, and they're just unfortunately not a healthy person who could be receptive, who could be helpful, who can really get you to where you want to be, where you could actually be vulnerable with them, then unfortunately there are times where you have to give up. Like I said, giving up doesn't have to mean divorce, even though that's what it sounds like. Giving up could mean taking a different approach to your marriage, where unfortunately the ceiling of your marriage is going to be a little bit lower. You're not going to have this connection that we're talking about, where you're going to be so vulnerable and tell your spouse your deepest and darkest secrets. You're not going to tell them all of your goals and aspirations. You're going to tell them what time they need to pick up the kids and what day the garbage goes to the curb. And it's uncomfortable to talk about. It's uncomfortable to think about. Nobody likes to think about that. But we have to be honest. There does come a time when that line is crossed. Like I said, I'm not in a position to speak very broadly about what that line is. I certainly believe very much in people and pushing as far as we can till we hit that line. But when we cross it, and then we have to regroup and come up with a plan B. Is that 2 sentences?
No. So here's another question that came in. I feel that everyone, including my spouse, keeps on saying to go to therapy, spend money to talk and discuss basic communication. Why can't we just solve this one problem that we have? Why do we need to go to therapy, discuss all of our past issues and every aspect of our lives?
So that's a great question. And the answer is you don't. If you watch this entire show, we should be fine. But the truth is that communication is not so easy. And that's really what we're talking about here, is that it's a big challenge. And one of the reasons it's a big challenge is exactly what we're talking about, is because, I mean, in the question, they mentioned their past experiences. Let's slow this down. Let's play this out a little bit. Let's take a real life example, right? I recently had a couple. They graduated, Baruch Hashem, they're doing well. I texted them 2 weeks ago. They're still doing great, so I'm happy to hear that. They had been through a lot in their life. Each of them had stories that you can't imagine. Really, really wild stories. So yes, in theory, they were both smart people. They both been to individual therapy. They were very self-aware couple. They both knew themselves inside out, their spouse inside out. It was like a machaya to work with them because they were so ready to go in therapy. But they had a lot that they'd been through in life. And okay, so this question is like, so what? So what? Why can't we just sit down and talk? You're right. In truth, you should be able to, and halavai, you should. But what makes it challenging is because these things create, again, the word I keep using, and I'll explain it a little bit more in this question, the thing that keeps happening is what I keep calling blocks. There are blocks. This guy had been through so much in his life. He had been, let's just keep it sort of generic. He had been told by parents that he's not good enough, he's not valuable for his whole entire life. So now when his wife tells him, you know, something she needs from him, he starts to feel like he's a loser, he let her down, he's a failure. And she doesn't need him to feel like a failure in that moment. That's not helpful. She just needs him to hold the baby or listen to her complain about the baby or listen to her complain about her parents or whatever. She doesn't need him to feel like a failure and shut down and feel disappointed that he's never going to get it right and he's the worst husband ever. That's not helping her right now. So in theory, yeah, communication is amazing. Obviously, I love communication. But it's not so simple when we come to the table with our suitcases of all of our experiences. So here the woman was saying, you know, whatever, Yaakov, what I need from you is I need to talk to you about, you know, what happened this morning. And all of a sudden he hears, Yaakov, you're the worst person who ever lived. You're a failure. You're bad. You're always going to be bad. So that is what we answer the question. That's why we need to go to therapy, because he needs to understand that he's not bad. He's not going to be the worst husband ever. He probably already isn't the worst husband ever. He's amazing. But he has all those voices yelling at him that he hears over and over again because of everything he's been through. So he needs to have that other person in the room just to help him realize what's going on for him. He doesn't even realize that when she says to him, can you help me with the baby? He's hearing, I'm the worst person who ever lived. I'm the worst husband. So he needs a therapist to help pull that out. If he could realize that on his own, amazing. And like I said, they just graduated therapy a few weeks ago. I texted them they're doing well because this is what they're doing now. Now, when she reaches out to him, he realizes that there's a voice in his head saying, I'm the worst husband ever, but I need to hold that for a second and realize that's not what she's saying. And then he's able to be present with her. And Bli Ayin Hara, I haven't seen them in however many weeks. They're doing a great job on their own, realizing this, realizing that she's not accusing you of anything, but you have these voices because of the suitcase you bring. And that's okay. And like I said, she had her own thing. She had her own suitcase, her own history that she brought in, and the same thing, she had to work it through and appreciate she's also a good person, she's also a good wife, she's also a good mother, so many reasons in her own head that she didn't believe that, but the husband, he was never saying any of that to her. So yes, the answer to the question is l'chadchila, you don't need to go to therapy if you could do this on your own. The problem is it's very difficult. We're all nogei b'davar, we all have biases, we all have blocks that stop us from either communicating very clearly what we need to say, or just as challenging, hearing very clearly what the other person is saying. So because of my block, it's hard for me to say, let's go back to an old question, I'm desperate, because I don't want to say, I feel, when I feel desperate, I feel like watching my parents, their marriage, which was a disaster. I feel like I'm watching that all over again. So I don't want to say desperate. So I don't want to say that. So if it needs the help of the therapist to be able to pull out and say, no, you need your spouse. It's okay. You're not bad. You're not needy. You're not desperate. And in that case, it's the job of the therapist to help the person express what they're having a hard time expressing. In the example that I gave with the husband and the wife that I just stopped seeing recently, the job of the therapist is to help the person hear, because so often we hear, you're bad, you're terrible, you're the worst. And we need to pull that out and be able to just listen and be present. I think this is all in the title. Be present and be mindful with what our spouse is actually saying. We need to just hear them, listen to them, and respond to them. That's a big deal. That's a big, big deal. It's a big challenge. You know, we think, again, I'll just talks, we think a lot about communication as talking. We think communication means to talk, and that's not crazy. A big part of communication is talking. I'm communicating right now by talking. There's nonverbal communications, eyes, I'm using my hands a lot. So fine, that's all in the world of communication. But what we don't appreciate, and EFT definitely does appreciate, is that the other half of communication is to listen. You have to hear. You have to really be listening. And it's very hard to speak. It's very hard to be vulnerable and honest and to speak. And that's a lot of what we're talking about tonight. But we have to really mention the other side of this. And I just started it, but let's talk about this for a second, which is it's also very hard to listen. It's just as vulnerable for me to show up and to listen. Sue Johnson, who invented EFT, created EFT, whatever you want to call it, she has this expression where she says, "Are you there for me?" It's like a line we say, "Are you there for me?" How do you spell the word "are"? A-R-E. So she uses that as like a Rashi Tevis. "Are you there for me" stands for accessible, responsive, engaged. A-R-E, those are like the three words. Those are the three things we mean. When I say, "Are you there for me?" what I'm really asking is, are you accessible? Which comes back to our phone technology conversation. You're sitting across from me, you're available, you have time for me. Responsive, it means you actually are like engaged in what I'm saying. If I'm complaining, you're like, "Yeah, that's so hard," instead of, "No, it's not my fault, it's not my fault." And engaged is that you're there, you're present. So we're talking a lot about the communication, the speaking part, because it's so hard, it's so important. But I think that just as important, shouldn't like get lost in this, is the listening. It's really, really hard to listen. If your spouse says to you, "I really want your attention. When you get home from work, you have a long day, I really want to talk to you." That's really hard for me to hear that without hearing, "You're always on your phone. You're always distracted. You're always doing something." And the other half of this avoda that we're talking about tonight in the world of EFT, half of it is to be vulnerable enough to actually express your deepest feelings. The other half is to be present, to really sit with your spouse or partner, or friend, or whatever we're talking about in this case, to really be sitting with the other person and listening to them and listening to what they have to say without being defensive, without interpreting it as an attack, and to just listen and hear them. This Chassan Kala training that I do, there's for premarital, there's these two cartoons which are very, very funny. I wish I had them in front of me. I don't. I'm going to see if I could remember them by heart. But it's called "What He Said and What She Heard." And then the other one is "What She Said and What He Heard." And I'm trying to remember which one which, but whatever. I'll get the general nusach, even if I forget the exact words. But the first one is called "What He Heard." And what he hears his wife saying is, "You're irresponsible. You're reckless. You don't know what you're doing. You don't know how to be responsible for adults and for children, and you don't know how to behave, and you're basically a grown-up child." And then in the second slide, they show what she actually said, which is, "Drive safely, honey." Right? Because again, we interpret that. What does she mean, drive safely? She thinks I'm reckless. She thinks I'm irresponsible, something like that. And then the second cartoon was just the flip of that, where it says, what she heard. And she hears the husband saying in the cartoon, "You expect me to clean the house, take care of the kids, do everything, clean up, make dinner. It's just not possible." And in the second slide, it says what he really said is, "Are you feeling any better?" So, if it's the same thing as, he's just saying, "Are you feeling better?" Maybe he means it in an erlich way. But she's saying, "Oh, why is he asking? Because he's nervous. He thinks that I'm too demanding. He thinks that I have to." So, yeah, in summary, a lot of it is about communicating, is about speaking. But the other half of communication, it doesn't always get the same PR, is how important it is to listen, to be present when you're listening, not just to be present and vulnerable when you're speaking.
Okay, Dr. Avi Muschel, let's go. Live question. You're on.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So a lot of what you're saying is my life. I'm married for over 20 years, working very, very hard to save my marriage and keep myself together. But it's not working. My husband is that person who, it doesn't matter what you say, he's a bad person in his head. So if I say good morning, it's like, good morning, I'm sorry, I didn't say good morning to you first, or something like that. Like everything is, he's in the bed. And it's not necessarily that's how it is. For many years, I'm trying to work on this. And I think at this point, obviously, Skip, I'm emotionally divorced from him already. I have chosen to take care of me and my kids because for years and years and years, all I wanted to do was to make him happy. And it took me many years to realize that I can't make him happy if he himself doesn't choose to be happy. Both been in therapy for many years. And I'm really at a point right now of requesting the temporary separation to see if we work separately, to see if then we could come back together and do it. But I really don't want to do that. And maybe I've never heard of EFT before tonight. And I want to know if this is something that, as a last resort, before I request the separation, if it could help.
So I'm sorry that you're going through that. I'm sorry that you feel such a burden that you alone are the one who is fighting for the marriage and saving for the marriage and trying to save the marriage. It's such an unfair feeling to have. You have to feel that you're carrying that burden alone. And, you know, I respect however you proceed, whatever decisions you make. I find that people, you know, usually know you better than anybody else knows you, and you certainly know what you've been through better than anybody else knows what you've been through. So there's certainly no judgments in terms of how you go ahead, and I hope that everything should go well. In terms of, you know, this specific question, like, it's hard, you know, anything I'm going to tell you, you know already, anything that I'm going to share with you, you've heard, but there's two things that I would add, and then, you know, coming back to the EFT piece. Number one is there's a sign in the principal's office in the school that I work at. It says, the kids who are the hardest to love are the ones that need the most love, something like that.
Thing is, I still love him, and that's why I can't separate.
Right. And the fact that you love him is amazing. And that means that he just needs more love. He needs more love. And it sounds crazy. Like,
he doesn't accept it. How can you give love to someone who doesn't accept it?
Right. So if he doesn't accept it, what does that mean? That means that he needs even more, which again, it sounds crazy. You're already giving him so much. How could you give him more love? The answer is he needs more love because it's so hard for him to believe that another human being loves him. He's been through whatever he's been through in his life. He really can't believe that somebody else loves him. And that's why we, like I said, we double down, triple down, quadruple down.
22 years.
Yeah. I mean, again, I'm not judging what you
One second. I'm a little bit, I'm not clear, and I really want to understand this. You're telling her to cut yourself out till there's nothing left of her left. At what point is that point where it's not healthy and it's going to destroy the person themselves?
It has destroyed me. It has destroyed me.
Right.
I then went through therapy and built myself up and realized that I deserve more. And that's why I'm at this point. And another thing is that, am I showing my kids by staying in my marriage that I'm giving up on myself for quote unquote love? I have a daughter who's 21 in Shidduchim now. What am I showing her? Giving up myself, losing myself so that I can keep my family together? Like, where is the line drawn? Like, I don't want to break up my family. I want to keep everybody together. But I myself, okay, I've been through a lot. I lost my parents very close together in the last 5 years, 2 years apart. And when I lost my father, the second parent, I felt that I have the feeling of what's it called? When you love somebody without any attachments. I forgot what it's called. What?
Unconditional
love. I felt so alone in the world. You know what? I still feel very alone in the world because yes, I have my siblings and everybody has their families, whatever, but I don't have a husband. I am alone. And every day I get up and I take care of my family and I do for my family. But I'm alone. I'm a single mother, a single parent, but I'm married. So I can't reach out to get help because I'm married. And I feel that if I wasn't attached, then maybe I could take, like, I have lost myself. I'm at a point right now that I can't grow myself and be myself because of this relationship.
I think that it comes back to that point. You really have, you know yourself better than anybody. You know what you've been through, and if you feel that you're not a person, you're not a functional person as long as you're in this relationship, then I understand you. Like again, I'm not. I don't want to be misunderstood with what I'm saying. This is not your fault. It's not that your husband is right. This is not. I'm saying the opposite. But there's an opportunity for what EFT would do. Like coming back to your last question, then we'll go backwards. But what EFT would do was it would try to understand why your husband can't feel loved and see, with the help of a therapist, if he can change course and open himself up to being vulnerable to feeling loved. It's vulnerable of you to feel all that love for him. Can he match your vulnerability and feel loved as well? It's possible that the ship has sailed. And it certainly sounds like you put in so much effort that I don't want to make you much more, go along further with this and lose your own sense of self, because that's never good. You have to be a person before you're a spouse. I believe that very firmly. So if you feel like you're losing your sense of personhood and that you're not a functional human, let alone parent and sibling and everything else, so being a spouse is just not helpful. But to answer your question about is EFT still hopeful? Again, maybe. Can EFT help your husband realize? Again, I don't know what you've spoken to your husband about, so I don't know how much he realizes like where you're at with this. I don't know if he realizes that you're at the end of the rope, or if he just thinks like in his mind it's been like a rough 2 weeks. I don't know where he thinks. So in theory, I would want to open his eyes to this and let him know that you're one step away from separation and see if that is able to open him up. If it doesn't, then there's nothing really left to talk about, unfortunately. But maybe sometimes that last pull of like, I'm one step away from being out the door. I have 1.5 feet out. Sometimes that's enough of a hisaurus for him to say, okay, I'm done. I'm gonna change. I'm gonna do it. And maybe you haven't fully given up on him. And if you haven't, and he's able to wake up from that conversation, in that situation, I wouldn't be against trying EFT. But if you've had that conversation and he's already past that, or you're already past this conversation, then I feel your pain and I'm not in a position to tell you to go further with it. I'll share one really good line. It's really a really powerful line that I heard from one of my trainers, again, at the EFT conference. I've quoted them a few times because they're really good. But one of the trainers said, when somebody asked her about like divorce and separation, she said what she tells her clients, and I use something similar with my clients, is really what I'm telling you, I think, which is I always am optimistic and I always am a believer in hope, but I'm never in a position to tell somebody how much pain to endure. And I think that it's a very powerful idea, which is I can't tell you, if a person is asking this question, how much pain you should go through. Like, you don't tell me when I have to take Advil and go to the doctor. I can't tell you how many years you have to suffer in this marriage before you get out. So it's a very personal, difficult question. And I believe, Ben Munashlema, that you're the best person to answer that question, because you know. And if it's time, it's time. Nobody has any less respect for you because of it. If there's one little opening of light, then beautiful. Let's give it that last chance. Let's push for EFT. Let's have an uncomfortable conversation with him. But if that point has passed, then nobody here has any judgments of the fact that you've endured more pain than you can. Just
thinking, if somebody has been by EFT and done the work and not seen results, what's the next step? I'm saying the question is for those who are out to lunch, the spouse doesn't respond and they've done the work and it's not working. So the question is it possible to continue such a marriage, getting support from somewhere else?
So this is the question that we called before, what was the word we used? Unhealthy, something like that? Unhealthy spouse. And this is similar to the question that she's asking right now, is when do we draw the line and say, I can't go any further. And I don't have a good answer, but yeah, if a person is incapable, they've been to EFT, they've been to 3, how many times do people call me for therapy? You're our 4th therapy, what would happen to the first 3? I always it's a scary thing to say. So, at a certain point, if a person is unfortunately incapable based on whatever, life circumstances, childhood, whatever it is, But if a person is incapable of getting to that place, of being available, of being responsive, of being engaged in therapy, in emotional conversations, then we have to move on. And again, I said before, moving on can mean different things. Moving on could just mean moving on mentally and being what this question called emotionally divorced. And for some people that could work. For some people that could be more painful, in which case you need to get legally divorced and fully divorced and the halachically divorced, whatever, like in the literal sense. But at a certain point, if a person is just not able to do it, they're not able to do it. And we can't, again, I think deep down, every person can be capable. Every single person in the world since Adam Rishon has had feelings. So everybody has that ability, but if they've closed themselves off, they built so many stone walls over their feelings, and we try and we try and we cry and we reach and we beg and we therapy and this therapy and that therapy, and it doesn't break through those walls, it's painful. But at a certain point, we let go.
Okay. So here's the next question. How do you handle distractions and other external factors that can make it difficult to be fully present in your interaction with your spouse, with your loved ones? For example, I'm having personal family issues, siblings that need my help a lot, plus overworked. I'm just exhausted. So it's hard for this person to be present with his own relationships.
So this is a big problem now. I see this a lot. I was noticing this and thinking about writing about it, speaking about it. It's just such a common trend I'm seeing now with a certain demographic, couples that are in their 30s and 40s, that I mentioned this quickly before. They're both working many hours combined. They're both spending a lot of time with their kids, which is amazing. Baruch Hashem, it's a big bracha. Maybe no generation has ever spent more time with each gendered parent, fathers, mothers. Like it's something we've never seen before, but the result is you're exhausted. We have a lot of demands on us that by the time we get to our spouse, we might be out of energy. So it's a challenge, and we have to be respectful, and we have to be in it together. It's not, again, we made the joke before about the phones. Who's on the phone more? It's always my spouse. It's not about that. It's not about blaming the other person. It's really, again, we get into like the halacha l'maisa of EFT. It's like a whole different hashkafa about marriage and relationships. Our goal is that it's not me against you. It's we're on the same team. It's about we're having a hard time. We struggle. We're both working so hard. We're both, how ridiculous is this situation that everything is so crazy, and like it takes like a stepping out and laughing at it. How crazy is it that on the Sunday that my son has his football league and my other son has his baseball league, and that night I'm scheduled to be on Coach Menachem, that Sunday is the exact day that my 6-month-old chooses to be sick for the first time in her 6 months of life. So we laugh at it. It doesn't become, it's my fault, it's your fault, who's responsible, who has to take care of the baby, who's going to take the baby to the doctor. We don't make it into a adversarial relationship. It becomes, let's join in this together and appreciate that we're having a hard time. I'm not better than you. I'm not worse than you. We're both having a hard time with how busy we are. And if we start on that step, on that foot where we're both on the same page, we both want the same thing. We both have the same goal in mind. We both want to get closer. We both want to spend time together. The conversation starts to get lighter, right? If I ask you, like, when do you want to go out for dinner? And you say, yeah, I have to see. And then I start to get annoyed with you. No, you told me last week to wait till this week. You told me this week to wait till next week. Like, when could we go out? So that already gives a certain vibe to it that's going to steer the conversation in a negative way. But if we could just laugh a little bit and be on the same page and be on the same team and appreciate we're both so busy. We're both on our devices all the time. I'm on my phone all the time. You're on your phone all the time. I feel like we're basically just having my forehead is talking to your forehead. When could we just have a real conversation? Should we go out for dinner this week? Should we spend Shabbos together a little bit, like spend time Friday night, Shabbos morning, Sunday morning, whatever it is? Like I said, each couple, their own schedule knows they know what's best for them. But let's be in this together instead of coming from a place of you're always on your phone. Let's come from a place of we're always on our phone. I'm always on my phone. You're always on your phone. I'm always with the kids. You're always with the kids. Not like who's the better parent, who's the better worker, whose job is harder. Once we get into competitions, we're going down the wrong road. We have to get to a place where we're able to say we're in this together. We both want the same thing. I want to spend time with you. You want to spend time with me, but it's hard. I know your job is so hard. I think you know that my job is so hard. let's see if we could connect. When's a good time? And it just changes the vibe, the energy of the conversation. Like that just shifts everything when we have a whole different feel to it. That makes everything much lighter and much easier. What was the question?
Okay, Bobby, you ready for the next one?
Yeah, did we answer that one?
Yes. Okay, let's jump into this a little different angle, okay?
Sure.
How do you balance the need for personal space, alone time, with the importance of being present and attentive in marriage and relationships? How do I communicate that I have these needs to my spouse? So in short, I'm working on personal therapy. I'm going through some deep trauma issues, and I need private time to process whatever I'm going through. So how do I deal with that?
So that's a very good question. It's a very important question. Again, like the cell phone, it's a very common question I see quite frequently with couples. There's always, in many of the couples that I see, there's one person who always wants to talk about it, talk about everything, and there's one person who never wants to talk about it. And let's just kick it down the road. Let's talk about it next week. I can. And what they're really saying, I think, it's a different version, but it's the same idea as I need my space, I need my time, I need a little bit of room. And again, it's really going to be the same theme. It's about how you say it, how you hear it, changing the whole nusach so that it goes differently. What a person can say in that situation is, I need my space. And what the person interprets is, what do they start to hear? I'm too much, I'm suffocating, I'm needy, I am, what was the word I was obsessed with before? Desperate. I'm so much, I'm too much. I'm just not a good spouse. I can't hack it at marriage because I'm too much for my spouse. We need to shift away from that. And this person who is asking for space, they're not doing anything wrong. It's very healthy to have space in a marriage. You don't have to spend all day, every day together. You're allowed to have your own space, your own friends, your own even secrets to a certain extent. You're allowed to have your own life within your marriage, not like a hidden life, but your own part of life, your own experiences. It's fine. But how do you express it? How is that person expressing it? Are they expressing it in the way that helps the person feel desperate and needy and suffocating? Are they saying, stop suffocating me, you're too much? So again, coming back to our very consistent theme here, it's going to be about how do you express and how do you hear? Can the person who needs space say that? And I work with my couples on this. Say what you really mean. Say, I've been through a lot as a kid, and it's hard for me to talk about that with somebody else. I find even my spouse, even you, who I really love talking about anything with, but when I talk about this topic, it just overwhelms me. I find that the best way for me to deal with this is in my own head. I go for a walk, I bring my music with me, whatever it is. I feel good, I feel understood, I feel like ready to move on, and that's the best thing for me. Can the person say it in that way without blaming the other one of being too close, too suffocating, too needy? Can you just say it in that honest, reflective, like I said, ben adam la'atzma way of saying, I've been through a lot and I just find that I need my own space with this, and it's hard. Can the other person on the flip side hear that? Can they, instead of getting in their own head and being defensive about how needy they think they are, how suffocating they worry they are, how desperate they feel they are, can they just sit and look in the mirror and say, I'm a good spouse. I'm good. I'm not doing anything wrong. If she or he needs their space, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. It's not bad. That's not a personal attack on me. I'm not a bad spouse. But they just explained that this is how they deal with their trauma. They go for a walk. They listen to music. I think that's a very healthy thing for each person to have their space. Again, to me, it's all about how you're expressing it, how you're communicating it. Is it coming in a way that sounds like an attack? And assuming that it's not, is the other person able to rise above hearing it as an attack? Ideally, both of them could do it in that way. The person could just say, honestly, this is how I deal with things. Is that okay? And the other person could hear it, and beautiful, Shalom Yisrael. I mean, again, just I mentioned like trauma, like sometimes the content of the conversation is very loaded. So it sounds very personal. It sounds like somebody's blaming the other person. When you're talking about like a trauma, sometimes it sounds like, well, is there a secret? You can't tell me. No, I could tell you everything, But the way I deal with it is on my own. It's not because I'm keeping a secret from you. It's just, I need my own personal space to deal with that. I hope you understand that I love you, I care about you, but this is just how I deal with this issue, is I just go for a walk by myself and 20 minutes later, I feel better. And when you say it like that, hopefully the person's able to hear, they love me, they care about me, they need space. I remember it was really maybe the most extreme example of this. It was really one of the most extreme examples I ever had of a couple where one of them really always wanted to talk about it and the other person really, really, really didn't want to talk about it. Like Kutza, like far away from each other on this extreme. And what eventually he had a very good line. He was the one who wants to talk about things all the time. And he had a very good line. He said to his wife, if I felt that you didn't think I was too needy, like you love me, I would be fine not talking to you for like a month. I just need that feeling that I'm not too much. When I feel like I'm too much, I need to talk to you about it again and again and again and again to make sure that you love me. But if in the depths of my heart, I felt good that you really, really, really love me, I would be totally fine. Don't talk to me for a month. I feel good. It's all good. So I don't think a month would really work for him, but the idea is there.
And just by saying yes, that's going to work?
It wasn't yes, but it had to, no, she had to say it in a way that he really believed. And it didn't happen, unfortunately, for a while. It took a lot of time to get there. I just want to say one more practical, I haven't said a lot of practical things. It's been a little bit more theoretical. The communication piece is practical, but also one like Lamaisa tip is that I think it's important to have, like we spoke about this a little bit before, to have times. Is the person who always wants to talk about it is nervous that if we don't talk about it now, we're never going to talk about it. And the person who never wants to talk about it is nervous that we're always going to talk about it. So even though I'm not a big believer in compromise, in this situation, I like compromise as a way of saying, let's find a time that we could both agree is when we're going to talk about it. Again, I've given this example a few times already. Shabbos is my favorite example. It's my own personal example, but I think it works for a lot of couples, but it's not Shabbos, whatever. But that gives both members of the couple, a little sigh of relief. Because let's just say we chose Shabbos as our time that we're going to talk about it. So the person who's nervous that we're never going to talk about it is now has their Yishuv Hadas. They know, come Shabbos, we're going to talk about it. And the person who is afraid that we're always going to talk about it knows that on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we're not going to talk about it.
They probably drink.
Right. So we have 4 days that I don't have to worry about it. And then you have the one day where we will worry about it. So we both go to sleep feeling good that both of our voices were heard. Your voice was heard that we should talk about it at some point, and my voice was heard that we don't want you to talk about it today.
I'm just saying that's the reason why many people don't like Shabbos.
It does force those conversations. It does, and they're uncomfortable, but that's what makes our marriage.
Okay, here's a question which we've covered, but I'm just going to read it again, and let's see what comes out. My spouse and I have very different communication styles. I love talking about my day, friends, struggles, but my spouse doesn't seem to have the same interest in these topics. It can be frustrating for me because I feel like I'm not being heard or understood. On the other hand, my spouse tends to keep things to themselves, doesn't share as much about their own life. This has created a bit of disconnect between us, and I'm not sure how to bridge the gap. I want to find a way to communicate more effectively with my spouse, better understand their perspective, but it's difficult when we have such different approaches to communication.
Yeah, so it's similar to what we discussed, but let's take it like one step further. We'll mention a piece that we haven't mentioned yet. It's an important one. I'm surprised that we didn't get to it yet because it's a big deal. And that is when it's difficult to talk, sometimes we talk about talking, and that makes it easier. Like the way I think of it in Mishalem is when it's hard to jump into a pool, sometimes we step into the pool, and everybody's got different styles. I'm always the guy who steps very slowly, the water gets up to your knees, and then, lot you get into the pool. Some people like to jump in. It's really elu v'elu. But when you're not succeeding in jumping in, it's too big, it's too much. So let's talk about talking. Let's have a conversation about our conversations. Let's explain why it's hard for me to talk. Let you explain why it's hard for you to talk. Now, again, the beginning of that question, I forgot the wording, but the beginning of that question is very similar to what we just discussed, which is we have different interests, we're not always aligned, different styles, and that to me is not a big deal. Let's talk about it. But sometimes the person asking the question says like, it doesn't even feel like that's enough. Like we're on such different wavelengths. We're opposites in how we approach things. So that's where I would start to have a conversation about the conversation. So I would say, you know, I realize every time that I get home, I like to talk to you about my day, and you seem totally not interested. So I just want you to know that that's hard for me. I would love if we could have a part of the night where we could just talk 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever we have time for about my day. That's very important to me. So now we're communicating about communicating. We're not just saying, I need this from you and I want this from you, but we're talking about what I want to talk to you about, which paradoxically or maybe very fittingly makes it easier to talk about. That opens up the person, because if you try to just jump into it and say, what's your problem? How come you don't listen to me? I want to talk to you about my day. It's like too much. It's too uncomfortable. So let me talk to you about what I want to talk to you about. I want to talk to you about our conversations at night. I feel like they don't go so well. I would love if we had time. I don't know. It feels like we're on different wavelengths. It feels like we're not connecting. I would love if there was an opportunity for us to have every night where I could talk to you a little bit about my day. And then whoever the other person, I forgot the gender, the husband, the wife, can say, yeah, I hear you. Like, it is hard because when I go home from work, I'm really not interested in like anything else. I just want to like go to, you know, just go through my work emails and just go to bed. It's hard for me to start again with a whole new thing and have like emotional energy at 9 o'clock at night and listen to your day. But obviously I want to be there for you. So let's come up with a plan. So it makes it a little safer for that second spouse, because we took, like I said, like we took a half a step in. We spoke about what conversations we're having instead of just saying, this is a deal, I need you to pay attention to me. It's like we're talking to each other every night and it doesn't seem to be going well. Again, there's no judgment, there's no criticism. How can I have this conversation with you that it'll go better? Is it better if we don't have it? I feel bad. I really want to talk to you about my day. Could there be a time of night that we reserve to have a 15-minute like check-in with each other, where we just talk and I won't have any pressure on you before that or after that or anything like that? Does that work? And we go from there. I think that that's a very, very good first step. It doesn't really only answer that question. I think it touches on a lot of things about when it's hard to have these conversations. What do we do? I think the answer is let's start with the conversation about the conversation.
Hey, Avi, let's jump on one more live. I'm gonna have a few more I just want to cover before we go to the end. You're on.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So my question is, many times we're just coming at things from kind of like a reactive place. And it seems like we have to be super in tune or in touch with what's beneath the surface of my reaction. So my question really is, how do you get to the root of what the real underlying issue is and kind of address that instead of like the reaction of what's happening?
So that's a great question. And the answer is, I think, twofold. Number one, practice, and number two, timing. Number one, practice is the more we do it, the more we start to converse with, like the way you said so perfectly, like from the root of the issue, the emotions behind it, and not whatever the details are that we get distracted by. The more we do it, the better we get at it. The more we realize that when we're arguing, we're not actually arguing about where we should go for Shabbos. We're not actually arguing about where we should send our kids to yeshiva. But what we're really arguing about is that I don't feel like you're seeing me, or I don't feel like you're hearing me, or I don't feel like I'm hearing you. Like that is the root of our argument. So great, you said it perfectly. But by practicing it, the more and more we converse that way, the more we get used to it, the more we appreciate that that's really what's going on. That's number one. But number two is also very much about timing. And we've hinted at this before, we'll talk about it again, is there's an old expression in the world of psychology that goes, strike when the iron is cold. You can't have conversations when we're emotionally heated. We're not going to have productive conversations. I say this to clients all the time. I've just used my own schedule as the example, but like 9 o'clock on a Monday night, that's not the time to talk about what were you thinking when we spoke about going to your parents for Yom Tov, and what was I thinking. That's not gonna be a good conversation. Monday night, let's just, both of us, we should admit we're both tired. It was a long day. Let's hold off the conversation. One of the things that I love about relationships and marriage, I know it's not always so simple, but 99% of the time they're not going anywhere, at least not tomorrow. We have a week. If I don't talk to you about the issue tonight, it's fine. We could talk about it on Tuesday, on Thursday, on Friday, on Shabbos, next Sunday. Like, very few issues in marriage are genuine emergencies. We have relationships that are for a very long time. We'll get to it. So if we have a very hot topic, a very hot conversation, we don't have to rush. If we're both tired, if we're both exhausted, we both had a long day at work or with the kids or with both, we don't need to like force this conversation right now, because I'll just be honest with you, it's not going to go well. I just could sign off right now. It's not going to go well. Let's wait till we can have the conversation better. Let's wait till our brains are on our heads are on our shoulders, like everything is connected the way it's supposed to be. We're thinking normally. And let's have a good, healthy conversation when our heads are clear. When, again, that sometimes couples tell me that they never have that. I understand, it's very hard.
Well,
Everybody has
Can
some.
I interrupt for 1 second? What about like, I know for myself, like if sometimes I'm like really in a bad mood about something that has nothing to do with what is going on at that moment, but it's something that happened previous, but I have that I need that time to kind of dissect, like, what am I really uptight about? Like, it's not the fact that you didn't put the dish in the dish drainer. It's because you didn't like get off, you like pay attention to me when you came home. Like, but it won't be so like obvious that that is the thing that I'm upset about.
Right, especially when you're upset about it. When he's not putting the dish in the thing, that's when you think that the issue is about the dishes. But then if you choose, and again, it's a tremendous gevura, which I admire that you could try to do. It's not an easy thing. But if you could push off that, that argument, that conversation, because right now you're angry, and when you're angry, you're not going to have a good conversation, right? We tell this to our kids: when you're hungry, when you're tired, when you're not feeling well, like you're not going to be your best self. So you're not going to have a good conversation with your spouse when you're upset about what they just did. We were talking about the phone before. Don't have a conversation with the phone when they're on their phone or immediately after. That's the worst time to have a conversation, because that's when they're going to be most defensive. You're going to be most critical. Like, it's just not the right time and space for it. Wait, like I said, strike when the iron is cold. Wait till everybody's emotions are cool and calm and we're both in a good place. Maybe it takes you a day to figure out why you're really upset. You don't feel appreciated. You don't feel like he's seeing you, but he appreciates how much you do. He can't just do this one simple thing of putting the dish. It's not about the dish. It's about feeling valid and appreciated. So it might take you a day to figure that out. It might take you a week to figure that out. I don't know when that is, but when you figure it out, let's schedule a conversation. Can we talk? I think I realized Sunday night, that whole thing with the dishes, I realized why I was so upset about it, right? And like, listen to how I'm saying it. I realized why I was so upset about it, right? I'm not saying I realized why you're really such a bad person. It took me a couple of days, but I realized why you're such a bad spouse. That's not the language we're using. It's like, oh, I'm curious about it. Together, we're on the same team. I thought about it. I realized that this is the reason. Is it okay if we have a conversation? It's still going to be a difficult conversation, but if we're in the right mindset, now we could sit and talk and say, I realized sometimes I don't fully feel appreciated in this relationship. Sometimes I feel like I work really, really hard. And I ask you like a little thing, could you just put your plate in the dishwasher? And you don't do it. It feels like you're not taking me seriously. It feels like you're not valuing my time. You're not respecting me. You're not appreciating me, whichever one feels the most right. Maybe it's a combination. But when you say it like that, it's still hard to hear, but it sounds different than waiting right away that night saying, why can't you put your dish in the thing? You don't put your glass in, you don't do this, you don't do that. I asked you to take out the garbage, and then we just get into a whole thing. It doesn't go anywhere. So just pause. It's okay. Spouse, it's not going anywhere this week. Let's hold on, hold that thought, hold that feeling. Think about it, be reflective, the Ben Adam La'atzmo piece. Look into yourself, and then we could come back and we could have a conversation with our spouse in a calmer place. It's still hard, but have a conversation of, you know what it is? I realize, like almost like, I realize that this is what it is. I realize that I don't feel appreciated in that moment. I don't feel valued. And again, he may have a hard time hearing it. I'm not doubting it, but it's easier than if you say at that moment, why don't you put your plate away?
What if you don't realize it? Like, what if you never, like, what if it's really difficult to sort through? And that's maybe the like block of the communication is like, I have a hard time identifying what is going on with me. Like, I don't know how I'm feeling that way.
So again, that's where we've said before earlier tonight that might be where therapy is beneficial, not because it's such a terrible issue necessarily. I don't know the extent of it, but because you're not able to see it, you can't see your own experience all the time. So all the therapist does, again, it's not this scary process. The therapist is just helping you pull out what your feelings are that are blocking you from expressing it. And in theory, the therapy is helping your husband pull out whatever feelings are blocking him from hearing you, and why when you say, I don't feel appreciated, he gets all worked up in theory. I don't know what his reaction is, but the point is that's what the therapy does, is when you can't do it yourself, so fine. So then the therapist helps pull that out.
A lot of self-awareness.
It's hard, a lot of self-awareness, a lot of introspection and reflection, and it's a real challenge to really do well.
Very good. Okay, so let's go to the next question. I'm trying with my spouse to build a strong relationship. It can be challenging when other people, such as in-laws, get involved. For instance, my in-laws may have different expectations, values, beliefs about marriage and how we should do things with chinuch, which can create tension and conflict in our relationship with my spouse. How do I navigate this situation?
Okay, so you're not going to believe this, but it turns out that fighting about parents is actually not so uncommon. According to one study I saw done in 2009, in the frum community, parents was one of the 5 biggest argument topics. I forgot the whole list. Whatever, we could talk about it. I forgot what the list is, but it's out there. So parents and in-laws is a major topic of discussion. So we need to say, I don't know which way to go with this. There's a few angles here. Let's talk about parents first, and then at the end we'll see if we go back. But when it comes to parents, it's an issue that I see all the time. I mean, I work a lot with young couples, so especially with young couples, it's like a real issue to balance out and to navigate, that they're always feeling this pressure, their Shana Rishona, the early years of the marriage, certainly during their engagement. So what do we do with that? So it's tricky. There's a lot of honesty that's required in the communication, but there's one piece that I want to add. We mentioned it a little bit before. I want to really expand on it because it's important in this context when we talk about parents and in-laws. The couple have to feel like they're on the same team. We were talking before about how every time there's a conflict, there's really a deeper feeling. So we mentioned a few of the deeper feelings here. We just gave the example of the dishes, feeling unappreciated, unvalued. So I see a lot of arguing about parents, in-laws. Your parents are so annoying. You're going to your parents for Shabbos is so hard. This is how I have come in my experience working with these couples. Like I said, often newlywed couples. This is how I understand that claim. This is, again, we'll skip like 4 sessions for everybody who's had this issue. You could skip ahead 4 weeks and get to this punchline. I think this is what I see very often. Maybe it's yours too. I don't feel like I'm your number one. I feel like you like your parents better than you like me. That is very often the feeling I see for people who have issues with their parents. It's not that your parents' hashkafas are different than mine. Okay, your parents' hashkafas are different. Who cares? Your parents have input that we don't really, okay. The issue is, I think that you take your parents' advice very seriously, more seriously than you're taking my advice. That's the part that's really painful, and that's really creating a divide between us. If we both feel like we're on the same team, so who cares? So your parents are a little different. Okay, so we'll have a phone call with them. They'll tell us what they think. We'll hang up the phone, and then we'll talk to each other, and we'll decide how we want to send our kids to yeshivas, how we want to be mechanech then, whatever it is. But it gets a little sticky in the marriage when I feel like you care more about what your parents have to say than what I have to say. You care more about what your parents have to say than anything else. That's when it gets a little bit uncomfortable. So that's really the conversation we want to have. Again, I can't promise you that that's the issue, but in my experience, it's a lot of the times that's the issue with parents, is that feeling of second best, second fiddle, whatever you want to say, however you want to say it. That's the feeling I often see in these kind of scenarios. So the conversation that has to happen is we have to get you, a husband and wife, chas and kala, on the same team. You have to be each other's number one, and the other person has to believe that you are their number one. You have their back no matter what. They have your back no matter what. It's not me and my parents against you and your parents, because sometimes when we're dating, maybe even engaged, it is a little bit like that. my parents thought that we should get this band, your parents thought that, and a little bit it's like me and my parents versus you and your parents. At the very least, at the chuppah, if not before that, it has to be me and you versus the world. And if our parents say something that's helpful, beautiful, we both got help from our parents. And if our parents are doing something that's difficult, that's stressful, that's annoying, that's intrusive, it's not pleasant, nobody likes to deal with that, but it's me and you dealing with our parents on the outside. It's not my parents, I'm not juggling you and my parents. I'm with you, my number one. And then my parents we have to navigate how they deal with this, how we deal with their advice and how do we respond. We have to be respectful, etc. Like there's a lot of pieces to balance there. But the bottom line is the feeling that has to go in those situations is we have to feel like we're on the same team. It's you and me versus the world. And my parents are included in the world, not included in you and me. There's other pieces to that question, but I don't know, like maybe we'll get back to that, whatever you want.
Okay, Dr. Avi, I don't
Yeah.
like to do this, but we got to go to closing because the Ilam's tired, me especially. But we have a lot more questions that we did not cover, and you know what that means, right?
What does that mean?
You have to come back.
Okay, next week
Right,
is good.
so-
You told me that I'm not available for you, so I'm trying to not be
I have an
defensive and
opening,
critical.
I think February 27. In February 27, I think I might have something for you. Okay.
Okay, sounds
First,
good.
I was going to go Dr. Avi Muschel coming on tonight, giving tremendous chizik. I mean, tonight was very, very powerful. The questions were powerful, and I think we covered a lot, but there's a lot more to cover. We all need chizik in this Indian, and thank you so much for coming again. Tonight's year is a schus for Fushleima. What's the person's name? Do you have the person's name?
Yosef Chaim and Brian Peril.
Schus and Leila Nishmas, my father-in-law, Tovi Ben Baruch Yosef, Hashem Shavliya. And again, if anybody wants to join the WhatsApp chat to get every Sunday the flyers, please WhatsApp me at 848-525-0066 and save my number. You go to menachembernfeld.com. You can sign up for his emails. We get all the information. If anybody's here the first time, every Sunday night, 9:30, the Zoom ID. We covered so many topics and so many amazing people that come on. Next week is Erev Shavuos, so please join us with the Chashuv Rav Yossi Zakatinsky from Five Towns, the Mashpia. He's going to really bring in Shavuos with us. He's going to really give us the chizik we need before we go into that Yontiv, expanding the domain of Avodas Hashem. How everyone could find their place on Shavuos. It's going to be a very powerful event. Please, everybody join. Let people know about it. Again, everything will be recorded. It'll be on menachembernfeld.com. If anybody has any questions, please email coachmenachem@gmail.com. And tonight's share again is share number 143, not 44, 143. And if you want to listen to it, we also put up on the phone line at 848-777-GROW. That's 848-777-GROW. You can listen to it on YouTube, on Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, Kolosh, and another 50 other websites. So listen to it, listen to the share over and over again. If anybody wants to be in contact with Dr. Avi Muschel, I'm going to say the information. Menachem will put in the email anyway, so I'll say it quickly. His email address is Dr. Muschel. That's Dr. DrMuschel@gmail.com. His website is dravimuschel.com. And he's giving out his phone number so everybody could harass him. His number is 848-232-1177. Again, that's 845-232-1177. Again, thank you to all the advertising sponsors, the Lakewood Scoop, Ellie and Ariel from 5 Town Central, Chayla Cal from JCN. And Dr. Avi, it was amazing tonight. It was powerful. It was vulnerable. We did the EFT, but just by doing the shir. This shir should be called Let's Get EFT. We should change the name to it. We're going to first go to a closing. The number is 845. Somebody texted 845, not 848, 845. And thank you again for coming on. And Menachem, I'm going to go to you first. And Dr. Avi, after 2 hours, now, this is what I'm talking about. You have what I'm saying? Now you're going to come out with what you want to close with. Coach Menachem.
Yes, so thank you, Dr. Avi. And Hashem should help us all. There's many out there who need Yeshua, and they need help. And many out there are going for help, whether they feel it's working or it's not working. They don't know what's the next step. But like we always mention, we can't forget tefillah. Hashem put us here. This is where I am now. This is my struggle. Hashem, what do you want from me? What do you want me to do? I'm doing so much. We got to talk to him. But like we heard, this is emotional focused, and because it's focused, sometimes it could get hard. And I wonder how many people, Avi, maybe you could tell me, are healthy in the sense of nothing comes up from their childhood, and when they have the conversations, everything is in the present moment. They don't have triggers. I think many have baggage, many have things that they bring along from the younger years, and automatically in relationship, that's where it comes up, and it takes work. Like we heard, even before going to EFT, you might have to go to individuals therapy, because that's what comes up in EFT, to be able to talk to your spouse in an open way. You know, this is what comes up, to understand. And like we heard, a lot of self-awareness, to become aware of what are the triggers. Why do I feel this way? By yourself, before you going to your spouse and discussing it, be able to sit down. Why do I feel this way? Ask yourself. And then wait for the answer to see what comes up, and say, why do I really feel this way? And, you know, something deeper. And many people do need somebody to hold their hands, whether the therapist or somebody who can help them, guide them. And on the way, we do need some support, like we heard in the past. Do you have somewhere else to go for support while your spouse is going for work? Hopefully it works. Hopefully you get through to them. But where do you get support while you're on the journey? While you're not getting it from your spouse, you have to get support somewhere else. A little bit of self-care. It can be a shmata. It's not going to work. If somebody feels like a shmata, then whatever they're working on is not going to work. So a lot of self-care, a lot of self-awareness, and a lot of tefillah. And thank you very much, Dr. Avi, for being here. And like we heard, we'll need you again, Mitzvah Hashem. One day, we'll continue the conversation, and Hashem should help us all, whatever we need to go to the next step with what we learned tonight.
Dr. Avi, I'll mute, and then let's get to the closing. I'm just going to read one text that somebody wrote. Okay, Dr. Avi? Okay, you got to unmute yourself. Okay, somebody who just wrote, this is one of the texts, but I just want to read it because I want Dr. Avi to understand my communication. I want to understand clearly what people feel about him. This episode tonight was incredible. Dr. Muschel is brilliant. His teachings tonight was so informative and helpful. Thank you so much for all this to help put it together. You should be good benched. Okay, Dr. Avi, closing.
I didn't prepare anything, so I'm just gonna. There is a common belief that the state of marriage in America right now is at an all-time low, that the divorce rate is an all-time high, and that marriage has never been worse. And the research actually finds the exact opposite. The divorce rate is very high. That's true. But the reason the divorce rate is high, according to science, according to studies on this, is because people in our day, in our age right now, have never been asking for more in their marriages. They've never been reaching higher. They want so much from their marriage. We're so into self-awareness and emotional vulnerability and communication. We talk about all these things. We have this incredible podcast that talks with different people on this topic every single week. There's so much information out there about therapy, about emotional vulnerability, all these things we're talking about. Every concept is so out there right now that people are able to reach for more in their marriages than they've ever reached in thousands of years. And so the bad news is, unfortunately, there's a lot of pain. And we spoke to some people tonight, and so many people have had bad experiences. But the good news is people are awesome. And that when you just believe in another person and you reach for them, so many times it goes well. And the marriages today in our day and age are among the best marriages in the history of the world. People today who are married and it's working, and you're able to go to that vulnerable place and the other person's able to hear you, that feeling is better than any other feeling in the world. People who have felt it know, people who haven't felt it know, but that's why they're trying so hard to feel it. It's such a powerful feeling to feel connected. It's something that we just, like I said, we don't ever give up on, because that's all we want. And so the people who unfortunately are struggling, but when you get to that place, when it works, when you're able to have that, even if it's just that moment with your spouse or with your friend or with whoever, your children, your parents, and you're able to really just speak to them honestly and have them listen to you honestly, it's such an unbelievably powerful connection. It's such an unbelievably powerful feeling that it's exactly the kind of feeling that everybody on this Zoom is just reaching for and striving for. And Hashem should help us that we could continue to reach for it and strive for it. And Mirza Hashem be matzliach in achieving it and getting that feeling of connection And as we approach Shavuos, not only our connection with our spouses, but our connection with Hashem is the one that we're really working towards for another few weeks towards Shavuos. So we should all be zocha to feel that connection with everybody in our lives, and we should keep working towards achieving that goal.
Amen.
Thank you, Dr. Avi. Again, everybody have a great night. We'll see you next week, May 21st, 9:30 with Rabbi Yossi Zakatinsky, Ereshuas. Get ready to be Makabel the Torah for everybody, inclusive, how to get everybody involved and what the Torah has to offer. Please join us. It's going to be unbelievable. Dr. Avi, you're the best.
Thank you very much.